shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul. Watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated. Misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded. Watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother. Standing by to dethrone each other. Watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon. Desensitized in our lust for attention. Democratized by our voyeur obsessions. Watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection. Don't let them project you as you are. Feel your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye where the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, and on Revolution Radio as we come into tonight's show and broadcast live on Uncle Jimbo's cabin in the Great White North on this Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning if you're on the East Coast. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we do this thing 3 hours a night, 7 days a week. We want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the paranormal, supernatural, spiritual, demonic, and so much more. If you're on the Spaced Out Radio side and you like our music, you can click on spacedoutradio.com and the Ron Bumblefoot Thal banner. The guitar god himself, Bumblefoot, formerly of Guns N' Roses, is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. You can also check us out on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. Right now, I'd like to say hello to everyone listening in on the Revolution Radio chat room on the High Plains Talk Radio Network, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with our fans on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Chronicles of the Unknown, Forest Moon Paranormal, and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. Have you signed up for the SOR Space Travelers Club yet? No? Well, it's time. It's only $5 a month, and with that, your name gets entered in a monthly prize draws. You get access to a private group interviews, access to a special section on our website, and much more. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. While at Spaced Out Radio, you can also check out our latest blogs. Mine is how it ties in this show with anxiety and depression, because I suffer from that, and it all seems to come together. You can also check out Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire for your latest and weird news. Tonight's show is brought to you by Rivulet Reiki and Readings, providing healings in person or at a distance. PurplePlates.com, helping heal your body, mind, and soul. The New Agora newspaper is the official paper of this show. And the iTunes app, Spirit Story Box. It's the official ghost hunting app of SOR. Remember, if you are a listener on Revolution Radio, the Double R Machine is the largest non-profit radio station online. Do us a favor, take the time to visit freedomslips.com and donate today. Andrea Mesich is what I would describe, and this is my opinion personally, as an unwilling participant of the paranormal. She was skeptical and pretty much a non-believer in ghosts, ghouls, spirits, or anything odd or strange. She really didn't have time for this type of imaginary folklore. It wasn't into her study it. It wasn't in her to study it, read up on it, or even tolerate an in-depth conversation on anything out of the ordinary. But it's amazing how one's attitude and philosophy can change, and quickly, when a personal unexplained experience just comes from right out of the blue. Since that experience, Andrea has jumped in with both feet into the deep end of the paranormal pool. From ghost hunting to chasing down demons, she's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly that the paranormal has to offer. And this is an important topic to discuss, because Andrea is one of those investigators who now goes in and cleans up the paranormal messes left by other groups whose lack of experience may have caused more harm than good. Andrea Mesich joins us on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Andrea, welcome back to the show. How have you been?
I have been doing fantastic, and thank you so much for having me back. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you too, because lately you haven't had very many good experiences with radio show hosts. So I
haven't.
You know what? I got to change that. I'm going to change that tonight. I'm ending that bad radio karma for you. And we're going to have some fun, and we're going to get into a lot of questions. Our audience is going to participate because our chat rooms are already packed. And they're listening in, and they will be asking you questions, okay? So when they fire up, I will read off the questions, and they're usually pretty smart. They keep me on my toes. So it's going to be a fun night indeed. And once again, I am glad to have you back. A lot of our new listeners, because the last time we actually had you on, we were still this small, little, dainty little radio show. And now we've grown quite a bit. And our confidence has grown. And, I mean, you've seen us around, and you've been a supporter of this show as well in
Definitely,
listening
I love
in.
it.
And thank you for that. So a lot has changed. A lot of our listeners are brand new, and we're gaining new listeners on a daily basis. So I would love it, because your story is intriguing. You didn't believe in any of this. You were somebody who was like, get that crap away from me. I don't really need to be hearing, these folklore stories of ghosts and goblins. What changed your mind? What happened to you?
Well, basically, like you said, I was completely skeptical. I mean, I was one of those, my brother, Andy, and his now wife, Jamie, at the time girlfriend, were very big into the paranormal. And I was one of those who would laugh at them whenever they'd come and try to tell me a ghost story, to say, come on this tour with me, or let's go see this haunted place. And I just, it was just like, to me, it was silly, because I kept thinking, well, what would a ghost want to stay in this world anyway for? I mean, it just seems like this would not be a place that I would want to stay, because there's so much wrong with the world. And, and I was one of those, I was growing up teenager. I was the typical, like, moody, everything sucked kind of a teenager. So I just didn't believe that it could be possible. But one day, my brother and his now wife went to Gettysburg, and they're not the souvenir collectors where they'll go into a souvenir shop and, buy like a little bell or something that says like Gettysburg on it. They want to take something that has meaning to them. And one of the things that my brother did collect was little pebbles from the battleground at Gettysburg, because he was like, wow, people walked here, people fought here, people died here. This is, something really powerful. So he brought these little pebbles home. At the time, they weren't married, and he was still living with, me and my mom and dad. And so he had that, and all of a sudden, after he came home, things started to happen. And they were things that I could ignore at first. But their friends went to this thing called Bastille Days in Milwaukee. They were about 35, 40 minutes away from home. And I heard somebody come into the house, walk through my kitchen, walk past my stairs that led up to my bedroom loft and into my brother's room. And I assumed my brother had come home from Bastille Days. So I went downstairs to talk to him. And sure enough, his bedroom light was on. And I had turned it off myself, because my mom was one of those, like, she goes crazy if you leave unattended lights on that aren't necessary to raise her bill. So she made me turn off all the lights before I went to bed. So I went to go and speak to my brother, and his door opened by itself. And when I looked in, there was nobody in the room. And I thought, okay, this is kind of weird. So I went to my mom's, and I said, I went to her bedroom, and I kind of asked her, did anybody come home and say goodnight to you and leave? And she's like, no, but I heard somebody come home, are they in their bedroom? I said, no, I think we got a problem. Somebody might have broken into the house. because we both heard the walking. We both heard, somebody going into the bedroom. The light was on when it shouldn't have been on. So, of course, I grab a butcher knife and I get my mom a butcher knife, and we're putting knife in the basement door just in case anybody snuck down there so they couldn't get back upstairs. And I'm walking around the house like Dirty Harry, trying to be all brave and checking under beds and checking in closets. And I went and looked in my brother's room one more time, and I turned the light. And as I left, the light turned back on by itself. So I went and I turned it off one more time, and I start backing out of the room slowly, watching the light switch. And sure enough, the light switch goes up by itself. And after a frantic call to my brothers, they come rushing home, and they're checking everything. All the doors are locked. The windows were locked. There was no footprints in the mud except their own, because it had just been raining. And so they could see their footprints, but there was nobody else there. And so there was nothing that really could be explained at that time. And my mother and I both heard it. It wasn't just something that I heard and thought, okay, I can pass it off. My mother heard the exact same thing in the exact same manner, the same kind of heavy boots, the same walking right into where my brother would be sleeping. And it was just undeniable at that time. But I'm like, okay, we can explain this away. Mass hysteria. It's got to be something. And then after that, things started to happen where I'd hear people saying my name when there was nobody actually in the house at the time except for myself. And there was a case when I was looking for batteries for a remote control, and all of a sudden, 20 minutes after I was sitting on my bed and talking to a friend on the phone when I hadn't found the batteries, a box comes flying from the very back of my closet on the top shelf. I mean, it was pushed way back there, and it literally flew 8 feet to where my bed was. And the only reason it stopped was because it hit my bed, and that ended its momentum. And when the box spilled out, there was all these batteries in the box, all the batteries that I had bought and lost, and I had forgotten that I put them up there. So we had a lot of different things that were happening in the house that I couldn't explain. I mean, you can't explain a box flying 8 feet. I mean, yeah, it could tip out and fall into the closet, but how does it fly 8 feet? But then, unfortunately, my father got very sick, and he had terminal cancer. It was 15 years that he had it, and we knew it was eventually going to happen. And unfortunately, he went into the hospital and never came out that last time. And so at that time, nothing was really going on because there was just this whole thing about my dad and preparing for the funeral. And my grandmother had just died a few months before my dad. And so it was a really tough time for us, and things really kind of settled down, or maybe I just didn't notice it. But a month after my father had passed away, my mom and I had just bought a brand new landline phone. We were having problems with those recorders that had the little tapes in them. They weren't the digital kind yet. And we just had so many problems with it that we decided to get rid of it and get into the digital era. And a month after my dad died, the very first message we got on this brand new landline was all this white noise. And then in the middle of the white noise was my dad's voice saying, "I love you." And then another voice that we couldn't identify saying, "There's the light, let's," and then it cut out. And after that, there was no more activity in the house whatsoever. And so I kind of surmised, I mean, obviously I don't know for sure, but I think that whatever came into the house must have come from Gettysburg with my brother, maybe attached to him or his, now wife, and stayed because he knew that my dad was not long for the world. And maybe he knew that my dad was very spiritual, very religious, and would be able to help him pass. When my dad passed, they'd be able to go together because obviously he'd been stuck since, Gettysburg, the Battle of Gettysburg. So, perhaps he didn't know how to go, but he knew my dad would. And so he stayed with us waiting for my dad to help him cross over. That's kind of what I thought, at least.
I'm not going to lie, I still have goosebumps all over my arms from that story. And it reminded me of when Mrs. Spaced Out Radio's grandfather passed away. They were very close when she was young, but they drifted apart as he started a new life with a new woman and all this kind of stuff. And within a day or two of his passing, my wife got the phone call as well with the white noise, and then the voice in behind where she just knew it was her grandfather on the other end. And the funny part about it is we had a private phone line that nobody had the phone number to. Like, we didn't even get, telemarketers on that phone. It was it was strictly for our house alarm. And then that phone call comes in, And it's weird how they can seem to tap into a phone line like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, and it wasn't just that. That same night, my brother Andy, the one who I assume brought the ghost home from Gettysburg, he called and he was like in a panic because at this time he had just gotten married and he was now living with his wife in their first apartment. And he just rushed to our house after calling us saying, just stay home, I got to talk to you. And he was all white when he got there. And he said that I was just, on my computer and AOL Instant Messenger pops up and he goes, I don't have AOL Instant Messenger. I don't use instant messages. But it was, my dad's name, which is also my oldest brother's name. So at first he thought it was my oldest brother. And it said, the lightning is beautiful up here. And my brother couldn't figure out what that meant because it was a beautiful night. There were no clouds in the sky. It was starry. And so he called my brother to ask him what he was talking about. And my other brother was confused because he was in a squad car. He's retired now, injured on duty, but he was a police officer. And he was in the middle of, a stop. And so he was in his squad car writing a ticket. He's like, I'm not messing with AOL Instant Messenger. I'm at work. I'm on duty. So my brother went to see if he could take a picture of this little thing that said my dad's name and then the lightning is beautiful up here, but it was gone. So, and that was the last, that happened that same day. Like ours happened earlier in the afternoon. That one happened towards evening. And then that was pretty much the end of it. But yeah, it is weird how they can tap into different frequencies in order to try to communicate with us.
It is amazing when spirit has that will and that power. Have you ever heard of, she goes by Dr. Love, what is her name here? I had her on the air one time. She wrote a book about that called Love Never Dies. And yeah. I know her name will come to me momentarily, but I'm just saying this off the top of my head. And we were doing actually a recording for this show and doing the interview. And so we're doing it over Skype, just like this phone call is. Yeah. And I paused to take a break. And her and I were chatting during the break so we could, catch our breath and grab a glass of water, bathroom break, whatever it was. And I come back, I'm sitting down, and I got my headphones on, and she goes, well, just 1 second. And in the background, I hear the white noise all of a sudden pick up and the voice of her husband, Jean. And I said, Doctor, did you hear that? And she goes, hear what? And I said, well, there was just this white noise, this static coming through the line, and then I heard a man's voice kind of mumbling. I couldn't make out what it says. She starts laughing. She goes, yeah, that happens to me every time. She goes, remember at the beginning of this conversation I told you he will probably come into this phone call? There he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and like I said, there's a whole bunch of different theories as to why it is. But one of the theories that I really do play a lot with is the fact that the spirits are on a different frequency than we're on. And you know how kids seem to be more perceptive of the paranormal than grown-ups? And there's a lot of reasons for that as well. But one reason is if you take a test on YouTube, there's a lot of these audiology tests where you can try and hear the frequencies that you can no longer hear. What I could hear as 5 years, as a 5-year-old kid, I can't hear anymore. That frequency is gone to me. I can only hear starting I'm not going to give away my real age. I'm old enough. It starts like maybe about 5 years before my real age, and it slowly gets louder until my real age. And then from my age until about 100, I can hear perfectly fine. So there were frequencies that we do lose every year that we age. We start to lose those frequencies. And sometimes the reason why we can't hear them necessarily on, right in front of us, like unless it's on a recorder or maybe like the Skype or a telephone, is because those are frequencies that we can no longer hear with the naked ear. And it takes for example, an audio recorder, like a digital recorder, records on various frequencies that we can't hear, and it pulls it up into a universal frequency that when we put on our headphones and we upload it to the computer, it should be something that the average person can now hear. It's still faint, but it's now in kind of a frequency that we're able to distinguish. And I think that's why they do use a lot of the equipment like telephones or recorders, because it's easier for them to communicate on the frequency that they're able to communicate without expressing so much energy. I mean, that's a theory. That's just one of my theories, but that's kind of the idea that I've been getting over the years that I've been working on this.
I was never really sure about the whole child thing until my daughter and I swear at the age of 18 months, she started seeing paranormal. She's now 17. She's turned it off, because society and school and friends and peer pressure kind of switches it off, and she kind of fights with it now. But from the age of about 1.5 to 3, man, was she active. She was so active, whether it was spirits in her room and seeing spirits. It's amazing how that open mind of a child, because they're so not formed by the educational system or anything like that, it's still so pure that if you allow them and say, well, it's not an imaginary friend, or, that conversation that most parents have, yours probably had it, mine had it. It's amazing what you can get out of a child.
Yep. Well, and I wrote a book, Ghost in the Coal Cellar, and in the book, one of the chapters actually deals with a child that was having communications with the spirit. And during the time when this child was having the communications, she was maybe not quite 3 years old at the time, just kind of like at the 3 years old, and then it kind of progressed as she aged to 4 years old. And the parents were very worried and took her to her pediatrician. Yeah, pediatrician. I don't have kids, so I don't know what their doctors are. But she took them to the pediatrician. The pediatrician said, well, this is developmentally, she's normal. Why don't you see a child psychologist? And the child psychologist said, well, maybe she's just ahead of the grade, because usually imaginations for a child develops around the age of 4.5 to 5 years old. Obviously, she's, developing this imaginary friend really early on. But they were going off the fact that, your child's just advanced. They weren't taking into consideration that this wasn't an imaginary friend. So when you have a child that's under a certain age that's having communications, or seems to be looking at something, or seems to be interacting with something that's not there, and they are before the threshold of imaginary friends, which is usually 4.5, 5 years old, then sometimes you really do got to question, is it really something that they're just make-believing, or is it something that they're actually seeing? Based on child psychology, everything that I've read and every child psychologist I've ever spoken to do say that imaginations like imaginary friends and making up those kind of games usually don't start until a certain age, because they're still working on their motor skills while they're in the toddler age. So when you see a toddler that has an imaginary friend, it really does kind of make you wonder, and it makes you question. And it really is kind of worth asking them questions like, what does your friend look like? What's your friend's name? If they can try to express it to you in the way that, at their age they can express it without being too leading. Obviously, you don't want to say, are you seeing a ghost? Are you seeing, dead people? You just kind of want to have a conversation with them and see what kind of information they can give you.
And you know what? That's a good lesson for parents too, if I do say that, because a lot of parents, we're not sure how to react. We're supposed to have those answers for children. We're supposed to be able to, Andrea, explain if a child says, I'm playing with my imaginary friend. We're supposed to say, well, our child has such a nice imagination, or something like that.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be logical. And we're supposed to raise our children logically, and open things up like this. It opens up a whole different world. And I'll give you an example about this. I made the parental mistake. My daughter, unfortunately, inherited my depression and anxiety. It runs on my side of the family. And one day I was having a phone conversation with her counselor. And I don't know why I asked her counselor this, because I don't really talk about it. I said, has my daughter ever discussed with you that she sees dead people? Mm-hmm. And the counselor was like, oh, that's not good. We should probably look at getting her on some medication for that. And I immediately said, no, you will not do that. It runs in the family, and this is a gift that she's been given. She's not crazy. I said, maybe as a counselor, you should be opening up your mind a little bit to see that there is another reality out there instead of prescribing medication. Yeah. Right? Because it offended
and that's
me.
The bad thing is it's always medication. That's the first answer. If they're hyperactive or if they seem to have concentration issues, let's medicate them, and
Absolutely. And it's so wrong, because it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way at all. This has to be an open conversation. It has to be open dialogue, whether it's children or whether it's people who are finding the paranormal like you did a little bit later on in life, not much more, but a little bit later on in life, where it shouldn't be a scary experience that people are having these things happen to them.
Exactly.
So when you have someone who is new to this, like you are, is just like thrown right into the deep end of the pool, like I said in the introduction about you, how do you break it down for them, Andrea?
Well, it's, it depends on the person themselves. I've dealt with a lot of people who they want to have a paranormal experience and they kind of like look at this as entertainment. And then you have the people that are very scared and they're terrified and they just want this to go away. And then you have people who have a curious mind, like, okay, this happened. This is kind of strange. I don't want to be scared, but at the same time, I'm really curious. So it has to be on a case-to-case basis. It just depends on their personality. If they're people that are kind of obsessive about it, where they seem to be like wanting to put themselves in those situations where there are hauntings and so that they can have those experiences, I tell them about the dangers of being a paranormal investigator. It's not all fun and giggles and sitting around telling fart jokes and there are things that I've been scratched, I've been pushed, I've had where it felt like something had its hand around my throat and I actually had trouble breathing. I've actually seen somebody who had 3 fingers broken on an investigation, like actually broken during a demonic investigation, in fact. So I tried to tell them, this thing is not something we don't know. The paranormal is the unknown still. I mean, if it was scientific, it would be called science. It's called paranormal because it's still something that we cannot define and we cannot truly fully understand. So why are you messing with it for fun? You just don't mess with it for a good time. And I try to guide them in that way to show them the responsible way to look at the paranormal if they're truly interested. If it's somebody who's terrified, I will always tell them about my experiences and I will talk to them about the different types of hauntings, from the inhuman to the poltergeist, the residual, and of course the intelligent, which would be the human spirits. And I explain them very, simple. I don't try to take it too far up. I try to explain it on as simple of a level as I can explain it. And I tell them about the different recourses that they actually have. And I try to make them feel empowered, because the more they know and the more they understand, the less afraid they are. And so I try to kind of empower them. And for those that have a good sense of curiosity, a certain level of skepticism, but yet they still kind of want to understand, I sometimes will take them under my wing and I first educate them again on the different types of hauntings and the different way we do investigations. And I might actually take them on an investigation and show them how an investigation is done to kind of help stimulate their mind and hopefully maybe even convince them to work in the field if I really feel that they have promise in the field and that they could do a lot of good for not only learning about the paranormal, but helping people. Because helping people, helping spirits, and learning about the paranormal is the ultimate goal of somebody in paranormal research. Not to just go and have a good time, and at somebody else's expense. You got somebody that just wants to have fun because they had an experience that scared them and they want that scare again. They go into somebody's house, stir up all this activity, and then leave the people that live there with the aftermath. And so it just depends on the type of person, and that kind of leads me to how I'm going to handle them and hopefully guide them into understanding their experiences and where to go with what happened to them.
You said something that is the ire of my anger right now, and it is the word science and scientific in the paranormal community. It is something that absolutely gets my hackles up. And I'll tell you why. Very, very few people, I would say out of 100 people, 99.8 of them have nothing to do with science.
Yeah.
And for people out there in the paranormal field who are out playing with ghosts on a weekend basis, who are not doing anything but going to these travel lodges for ghosts or touristy type places to do their so-called investigations, You are not a scientist.
Yeah.
You are a weekend paranormal warrior. That's what you are. So what do you feel, Andrea? And I want to get into this for the next few minutes here. What do you feel is right or wrong with the use of the term science when it comes to the paranormal?
Well, again, when it comes to the use of science and the paranormal, for one thing, I can understand if you go in, for example, when I say that I go in with kind of a scientific mind frame, what I'm talking about is I go in to perform experiments. I have a hypothesis that, which all scientists are with. They have a hypothesis, and then you go in and you perform experiments and you try to see what kind of experiments work, what kind of experiments don't. But the actual term science and paranormal kind of contradict each other, because paranormal means that which is not defined under scientific terms. It would be great if we could one day eventually get to that point. But unfortunately, I think it's going to be nearly, I don't want to say impossible because I don't believe in impossibilities, but it's hard because I believe that spirits are just like people, or even when you're talking about inhuman spirits, they have their own personalities, they have their own wants and desires when it comes to interacting. They have their own moods. They could have mood swings. I mean, you could have a spirit that's on, maybe PMSing and just doesn't want to be bothered. And so it's really hard to perform an experiment and actually have the kind of outcome that you're looking for every time, which is something that leads into science, is when you can repeat an experiment and say, now I can prove this. And that's nearly impossible right now when you're talking about spirits. It doesn't mean that it'll never happen. It's just right now it's very hard. But a lot of times when you have people that go in and they claim to be scientists and they are going in, and it just seems to me like they're trying to replicate what they see on television. They're not really actually going in to scientifically discover some kind of a new phenomenon and try to put, a term to it. They're going in and they're trying to be Zach Bagans, or they're trying to be Grant Wilson and Jason Hawes, and then using science as an excuse for what they do. And I think it's being thrown out there rather loosely, because a lot of people that go in, I would say right now the paranormal field is just inundated with people that are there because they want to get on television. They're there because they want to try to find some sort of fame. There's a lot of people that I know, even the ones who've been on TV. I know a lot of people who've been on TV that try to get on TV to truly educate people, to truly tell them the truth about the paranormal. And, they're leaving the field because they say that's not what people want anymore. People want capture a ghost in a box. They want, people getting possessed every episode. They want people to act like the Ghostbusters with all these scientific gadgets and go in there and get a haunting every single time. And, so when it comes to science and the paranormal, especially the way the field is rolling right now, it's not something that can be an interchangeable word. You're either a scientist and you're performing experiments, or you're a paranormal investigator and you're investigating a case of the paranormal. And it's really hard to interchange the two. I like to say that I go in with a mindset of a scientist because I want to perform experiments and I want to see what kind of experiments work, what kind of experiments don't. But at the same time, nothing that I'm going to come away with is going to be scientific proof of the paranormal right now. Hopefully in the future, maybe I'll be the one to make the billions of dollars, coming up with the actual answer if I continue to do this and I continue to push the field forward and I continue to push the boundaries of what we do in the paranormal field. But right now, I'm not a scientist because I don't have any scientific evidence that I've actually come away with when it comes to the paranormal. So, I think, like I said, science is kind of thrown out there a little loosely. But, I don't know. It's a hard, because I like to say that I do it from a scientific mind frame, but not that I'm a scientist. I'm not smart enough to be a scientist,
No, and you know what? My SOR Spacewire news director, Eric Markham, actually is a scientist. And him and I have ranted about this for at least 2-3 weeks now in regards to it. And this topic just keeps coming up because it's funny, because when I get people asking me, hey, do you have any openings on Spaced Out Radio? We'd love to come on and get our paranormal team on. We got some interesting stories. I'm always glad to hear. But I always ask the simple questions. What do you do with your evidence? Well, we collect it. Okay, you collect it. What do you do with it after you collect it? Well, we go through it and then we archive it. Well, what do you do with your archives? It's amazing how many don't have an answer to that question. Then you say, well, why are you doing this? Well, we're trying to take a scientific approach. Well, you can't. You're not a scientist. You're not writing out a theory. You're not writing out a possibility. You're not writing out a conclusion. Because then when you ask them, what are you basing your conclusions on? They have no idea.
Exactly.
They have no idea. Because in my opinion, and maybe I'm too stubborn about this, Andrea. Okay? Maybe I'm way too stubborn. But if you're sitting there going out every weekend playing with ghosts, it should be one of two things. It should be either A, you are trying to solve the trillion-dollar question to life, and that is there life after death?
Yep.
Or B, you're trying to help someone, either the spirit or the party who is affected, to try and get rid of that spirit and send them to the light. To me, there's no other options. Okay, yes, we can tell the stories, okay? We have a group here called Chronicles of the Unknown. They come on and do a paranormal show the third Monday of every month, okay? And they're actually telling British Columbia history. As they film a television pilot, they're actually telling British Columbia history through the stories of the spirits they contact at all of these like haunted museums and everything like that. Okay, they're doing something to help. If the spirit says, I want to go, they send it on its way. But 98% of these groups have no idea what a conclusion should be. So in your opinion, as someone who seems to be on the same dialogue as me, what should be the conclusion of a paranormal investigation?
Well, again, you see, that is where it gets difficult, is because when you've been doing it as long as I have, and you kind of have a mind frame, and you've kind of figured out your vocation and your focus in life, because I went from trying to find answers to the paranormal to realizing that there are real people that need help. And my main goal now is to help people, especially when they're talking about malicious entities or when they're in a lot of fear. But like I said, ever since, and don't get me wrong, I love paranormal shows. It's a great, to me, it was really awesome when Ghost Hunters came out, because my experience happened before Ghost Hunters, so I didn't even know that there were paranormal investigators out there that could help me. I was baptized by fire and I was on my own. I didn't know that I had help out there. I didn't know that there was something where people could have come in to explain what happened to me. I had to learn it all by myself. So when Ghost Hunters came out, it was fantastic. It was like, oh my God, there are these people out there. And then all of a sudden people who were afraid to come forward and tell their stories, or afraid to come forward and seek help because they thought that they were going to be humiliated or ostracized by their communities, they finally came to us and started seeking the help that they really need. But then as we started to go on and the networks wanted to push the envelope, and they said, well, it's no longer good enough that you're here doing research and that you're helping people. We want something like spectacular. We want to see possessions. We want to catch a spirit, in a mirror and then release it out into the wild, like a wildlife rescue, only a ghost kind of a thing. And now you have people that are watching that. And they claim, oh, we're doing it for science and we're doing it to help people. But really what they're doing it is trying to emulate what they see on TV in hopes, that that'll catch their big break when it comes to getting on TV. Because I've noticed, we'll talk a lot about the equipment we use or the places that we visit or the different types of hauntings. I'm very open about it. If people have questions, you ask me questions and I answer to the best of my ability. Again, this isn't a science. It's the paranormal for a reason. So I can only answer based on my research and my beliefs. I can't say I'm 100% right because, there is no way to prove that I'm right. But, I'm very open about it. But I talk to a lot of people that are so secretive. They don't want to share the places that they're going. They don't want to share the new equipment. They don't want to share their techniques because they think somebody's going to steal it and be the first to get it on television. So it's really hard, to kind of see what a conclusion should be and to kind of guide these new groups into what they should be doing, because a lot of them are in it for the wrong reasons to begin with. When you start it for the wrong reasons from the get-go, Well, there is no conclusion. There is nothing that you can really say about their group. It's one of those where they won't hear it anyway. They think they're right, and they think that they're going to have the next big thing, and they think they're going to be famous. And that's really the main focus. And, so unfortunately, this has really been hurting the paranormal community. And, like I said, you said, like, they throw the word scientist. We're doing it from science. We're doing it for this. We're doing it for that. But a lot of groups that I've come across who tell me that, like, hey, we're a scientific leaning group and this is what we do. They're usually the ones that I have these huge fights with, because they don't want to believe that an orb is a piece of dust. They don't want to believe that a reflection on the wall is actually coming from a window and bouncing off and was captured by the camera, and it's not actually paranormal, because then you are taking away from what they could possibly use to get ahead in the field and to try to get their name out there and to try to get paid to do lectures or to get on TV. And, again, we're fighting with, the state of the paranormal field right now. So it's really hard to answer the question you put forth, because a lot of groups are just in it for the wrong reasons. And so there really is no conclusion.
One of our listeners in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Gail, she actually Googled the scientific approach to paranormal, and this is what she typed out here.
Hi, Gail.
It says, the scientific method is a body of techniques for investigating phenomena, acquiring new knowledge, or correcting and integrating previous knowledge. To be termed scientific, a method of inquiry is commonly based on empirical or measurable evidence subject to the specific principles of reasoning. Now, those are a lot of big words for people in this community. And,
yeah.
and I'm not trying to be insulting to people, okay? But when you're watching Ghost Hunters, or when you're watching any of these television shows, they go to a place that's already haunted. Everybody knows it's already haunted.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the show, they sit down with the curator or whoever it is, and they say, guess what? Your place is haunted. Oh, my God.
Exactly.
Oh, my God. It's haunted. Like, can you believe this? It's haunted. Right? And but that's the schooling and the education everyone is getting, because there is no education in this field. So when they sit there and say, we use scientific method and scientific approach, not if you are trying to base a conclusion on just getting evidence. Getting evidence is not a conclusion. You need to be able to have direction. And I think in the end, and maybe you agree with me, maybe you disagree with me, that is what is completely hurting the possibility of science actually taking this study seriously, because everyone and their dog can do it. Everybody and their dog can take their money, invest it in all this gear that they don't need, okay, but they have to have it because the other group has it, and then go forward.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
How many groups out there that you know of personally, and you don't have to name names, Andrea, okay, but how many groups out there do you know of personally that don't know what to do if a spirit wants to leave?
Oh, I mean, I've encountered numerous. Like I said, I've been having my busiest year of my entire life, because I call myself the paranormal Ronin. And that means, in Japanese, Ronin means masterless samurai, and I consider myself a groupless investigator. I have people that I work with, but for the most part, I like to have the freedom of being able to travel from place to place, different cities, different states, to help people in need, to help other groups that, need somebody who's actually been doing this a lot longer than they have, because they don't understand, or they want to learn, and they, come and they ask for my advice. So I'm kind of free in that way. So, but I've been extremely busy, because I've had a lot of people, especially one, I just got called and the group said, look, we don't know what to do. They had another group in here. The other group came in and they were doing all of this, they claimed to, do the scientific method, and that they were going to find answers for this, the person. I can't really, go into it, obviously, for privacy reasons. But then all they really did was they came in, they riled the spirits up. They were very insulting. They were rude. They were doing a lot of provoking. And then they said, oh yeah, we got some really great evidence of the paranormal. Like, look, you see this orb here, there's a demonic face in this orb, and just scared the crap out of the person. And they came in and they said, you know what, we do feel there is paranormal investigation, or paranormal things happening here. But like the picture of the orb that had the demon face, that was dust. I mean, this was obviously dust, but they have her convinced that it was something demonic. And we just don't know how to handle this. We're still new. We don't know what to do. So they called me in to come and help them to have, and there's so many cases of that lately because of people who don't know what they're doing, and they get in over their heads and they make promises that they can't keep, or they're not what I would call objective. They go in with the mindset that it is 100% without a doubt paranormal, and they're going to find proof. I mean, if you think that something is paranormal, you're going to find proof of the paranormal. I mean, somebody's going to fart and you're going to swear you hear a word in that fart. It's going to be paranormal whether, it is or not, because you have that mindset. So they don't know what they're doing. And then it just makes more work for me. It just gets, because they get in over their heads. And that is one of the biggest problems we have right now in the paranormal field. And it does kind of irk me a lot. Like, I can understand the interest, but if you're not going to get in it for the right reasons, don't get in it, because these are real people that you're dealing with. These are real homes. And there's a lot of them. I deal with people that are terrified. And I don't want some person in there that sees a show on TV and says, hey, I can do that. I can buy a K2 meter for $50 and I'm an investigator. And then they go to this terrified person and say, hey, look, there's a demon in this orb. And it does get frustrating for me. Like when I talk about that, I get so mad. Oh, and then I go off on a tangent. So.
Well, we're going to get into demons in the next hour, and I want to finish up with this whole science thing because we got about 10 minutes left here before we're going to go to our first break of the night. When you hear these groups, and, they're popping up left, right, and center, and it's amazing how in every group there's someone who's been doing it for 20-plus years. And that one is a head scratcher to me, and I'm not trying to sound, naive or anything like that, or to put people down, but it's amazing how many people have been doing this for 20 plus years. And yet they still have no diagnosis for what they are to do in a haunted situation. So when you have people who come up to you looking for advice, looking for your interest and your intrigue in the way you investigate, because for some reason all paranormal teams want to know how each other investigates. What do you tell these people? Because that conversation can go many different ways.
Oh, and it always goes wrong for some reason. Because, the way I investigate, I do go and I investigate and I try to find out what type of a haunting is it in the first place. Are we dealing with an actual ghost? Are we dealing with something that's intelligent? Is it residual, which means it's not, because residual haunting is a misnomer. Residual is just leftover energy. It's not actually a spirit you can interact with or get rid of. Are we dealing with a case of an inhuman? I mean, what are we dealing with? That's the first thing that we need to take care of. Then we need to kind of go into the different ways that the spirit can be, taken care of. And like I tell them, I'm very blunt. I say, I am Catholic. I am a Catholic demonologist. I've studied theologies of various different religions within Catholicism, as well as other sects of Christianity and outside of Christianity. But I deal personally as a Catholic, and I can tell you what I do as a Catholic for, cleansings, and I can lead you into the right direction. But if you're not open religiously, because there's so many people that aren't religious or that are spiritual but don't believe in, different kinds, like they believe in God, but they don't believe in organized religion. And that's where it gets a little difficult. And then you start to get a lot of like the arguing about who's right, who's wrong. And I said, look, this works for me. I've had success with this. I have, had clients that have come up to me and said, they thank me because, they've had it taken care of. Sometimes I have to go back a couple times and do it, but eventually it does get taken care of. I said, this is what works for me. If it doesn't work for you, that's fantastic. But this is how I do it. And if you want to learn from me, I'm more than happy to explain everything. I'm more than happy to share with you the files that I have on theology, the files that I have on demonology, all the prayers and the rites and the rituals. I'm happy to share that kind of thing with you and explain it to you and try to have a debate with you. But a lot of times, if you mention the word religion, they just kind of shut you down anyway. So it's very hard for me to actually explain how I do things because they, in the end, don't want to hear about it because they don't want God being brought to it because, like I said, some of them are atheist or some of them are of a different religion or some of them are agnostic where they maybe believe in something, but they really don't. They don't know and they just don't want to talk about it. And so the debate gets shut down. And really what they want to hear from me is what kind of equipment do I use and what have I captured? What's been the best paranormal experience? They don't want to hear about what I do to help people if it involves religion. So unfortunately, when it comes to me being a demonologist, working with the Catholic Church, working with priests across the country, it is a very religious thing for me. So, if people don't want to hear about that, there's nothing I can do. But if they do want to hear about it and they want to learn about it and they want to know more about it, then I'm always willing to talk about it.
And I think that's an important part because as someone who does not go to church, I'm one of the people you described. I am a big believer in God. I'm on his bandwagon and everything like that. But I choose not to go to church because in my own perception, I have drawn a real line between my own personal spirituality and belief and religion. To me, they're two separate entities altogether. And I realize that when you're playing with spirits and you're playing with ghosts, whether they're demonic or they're benevolent or whatever you want to call them, there is a side of religion that goes into that, in my opinion, because this is what the Bible speaks of. This is what has been told, that the spirits continue on to the other side. But it still gets back to the whole scientific question that you say, there's a lot of atheists who do this. There's a lot of agnostic people who do this. Doesn't matter whether you're, Hindu, you're Sikh, you're Muslim, you're pagan, or whatever your religion is. Yep. So one way or another, that religious conversation is always going to come out of the paranormal field. Yet people, like you said, are having troubles accepting that. So when you try and explain that to people who want to go all scientific, they're going on the science board that we're going to prove this, we're going to be the ones, and you say, well, actually there is answers if you read the Bible or you listen to and do some religious study. That has to be a tense conversation, Andrea.
It is, and like I said, sometimes it is. Sometimes you just get shut down completely and there is no conversation. And like I said, you know what? It's fine. If you have something that works for you, I'd love to hear it if you're willing to share it and, maybe implement it and see if it works for me. But, if you're going to come to me and you're going to ask me for my opinions as somebody who's been doing this for over a decade and, somebody who has helped a lot of people and, has learned a lot about myself as well as the spiritual world. I can share with you everything that I know. But if religion is going to, be I guess the nice way to put it, a bug up your tushy, then really there's nothing I can do to help you. I'm willing to talk about it if you're open to debate. But, if you shut me down right from the get-go, then neither of us are going to learn anything, and then it just kind of, we get to a standstill. So, like I said, if you don't believe in religion, that's perfectly fine, but hear my point of view. And I'll love to hear your point of view. I love to talk to people from all over, all different. I'm anti-Ouija board, but I have a friend who is extremely into the Ouija board. She uses the Ouija board all the time, and I'm willing to hear what she has to say about it. I sure as heck, I'm never going to use one, but I'm willing to listen to her. I'm willing to have that debate with her. It's just a matter of you have to be open and willing to listen to all sides. And that sometimes includes a religious aspect because there is some kind of a spiritual, when you're talking about a spiritual sense, you're talking about something that goes beyond life, that goes beyond science. And so you would have to say it is spiritual. So there has to be some sort of a religious base to it or a religious tone to it. and you could deny that, or you can find a way to talk around that, and that's fine. But if you want to debate that, or if you want to learn about that, then you can come to me anytime you want to.
Well, and that is the conversation that many are going to have. I don't own a Ouija board, but I think it's funny that people will say no to the Ouija board, but yet they'll dowse or they'll use a ghost box or a spirit box or something like that to communicate. You know what I'm saying?
See, I find that, I don't use dowsing rods. I'm not a big fan of the spirit box, with the radio, because I find if it finds a clear channel, it's going to come through regardless if there's a spirit in the room or not. So but when it comes to EVPs, somebody told me that an EVP is just there's nothing different from an EVP versus a Ouija board. And I could get into the whole Ouija board debate, which I won't. I have it on my website. If you go to paranormalronin.blogspot.com, I have the Ouija board debate there. But there really is a difference. For one, when you're having the Ouija board, you have the planchette, and you have to invite the spirit to use you physically in order to move the planchette in order to get the answers. Whereas I can put I could put a voice recorder down and say, look, if you got anything to say to me, you can say it, but I got to go and get a pizza, and I'll be back in about 20 minutes. And I could leave the building and then come back, collect it, and leave the building again, and then listen, and I could have potential EVPs. You being there is not, and acting as a conduit is not something that's a requirement of getting an EVP session, whereas you actually being used as the conduit to move the planchette and letting the spirit manipulate your physical body is one of the requirements of the Ouija board. And so to me, personally, again, this is my belief, and I don't bash anybody who uses the Ouija board. If that's what works for you, that's fine. I just personally don't like to do it. But I do feel that there is a little bit of a difference.
And on that note, we're going to hop out for our first break of the night. Andrea Mesich is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We'll be right back after this break.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions.
Have you ever wondered about those weird and strange creatures people have reported throughout history? Do you wonder if those stories are real? Me too, and that's why I started Cryptopia.us. Hey, this is Rob Morphy, crypto historian. Join me once a month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will get into the odd and bizarre reports, from the Dover Demon to hairy hominids and everything in between. I will break down what people like you and me are seeing at spacedoutradio.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. We're starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. Second hour is underway. Tomorrow night on the show, we will be joined by James Borg from Euphoria Chronicles and Audrey, the Pleiadian. Yes, we're bringing in our resident alien tomorrow night. Literally, he's an alien. I've seen signs. I've confirmed it by my own eyes. That's tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. Hey, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, for our archives, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you could sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club. It's only $5 a month. With that, you get private access to a private section on our website. You get your name put into monthly draws and so much more. You can check out our resident guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, who is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Read up on our SOR Spacewire, and you can check out our blog section as we change our writings up daily. We have some creative writers on our team, so make sure you read up on those as well. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. So, tonight we are talking with paranormal author and investigator Andrea Mesich. She's an incredible, well-spoken woman when it comes to the field of the paranormal. Andrea, welcome back.
Thank you. You forgot to mention I'm cute.
Yes, you are gorgeous. I'm not gonna.
I am.
I'm not gonna lie about that. You
and I'm single.
Well, you know, I know that's going to send Joe Allgaier just crazy now in the SOR Space Travelers Club. He has probably the nicest hair of any man I've ever seen. I'm not going to lie. Anyhow, a couple of questions from our audience from that first hour. This one comes from Gail.
Okay.
How do you think a spirit is able to make contact physically by scratching, clawing, or biting, or anything like that?
Well, you see, there again, we get into the opinion. Again, I can't offer any scientific evidence because I could tell you what I believe, but I can't prove about what I believe. But basically, I think there are different categories. I think as you get towards the more malicious entities, I believe that they're the ones that are able to manipulate you a little bit more. When it comes to like demons, demons used to be angels. They were creations of God that fell from heaven after rebelling against God. There were multitudes. We don't know how many that is. It could be billions upon billions. But they fell, but they kept their angelic powers, and angels are very strong, and angels can actually manipulate you. They are not angels, I should say demons. Demons can manipulate you. They can interact with you. They can possess you, for crying out loud. They can, when we talk about things that can move objects, like actually lift refrigerators and lift those, something with that kind of power is usually what, and me personally, again, this is just going to what I believe is demonic. So when you're talking about physical manipulation, such as scratching, choking, pushing, shoving, yes, a spirit, like a lesser spirit, can have the energy to do that. They can build the kinetic energy from taking the things around them. Like when we hear a lot about electromagnetic fields, one of the beliefs is that in order to manifest and in order to gain power, it takes the electromagnetic fields, whether it's man-made or natural, in order to build that kind of power, in order to interact. But the stronger the interaction and the more, I would say, malicious the interaction, then I start to lean towards a lot of times you could be dealing with more of the demonic, especially as you get into like shoving somebody down a flight of stairs, like happened to one person. As I was walking upstairs, I felt hand around my ankle and it actually yanked me down, and I ended up sliding down the stairs on my stomach after I fell. So it kind of, it's one of those where it's kind of, I opine, I make an opinion. I can't prove it, but I believe a lot of it has to do with the demonic hierarchy, the demonic choir of angels, so to speak, and, the powers that they still have and that they still maintain all of their angelic energy, all of their angelic powers, where they can actually still physically manipulate things in this realm. And as you get down to where you're talking about human hauntings, you find that less and less. You find that they're a lot weaker, that they can maybe manipulate a ball. Ball's easy to move, because it's round. I mean, so if you push a ball, it's going to move no matter how much energy you actually put into it. But when you're talking about the scratches, I think you're talking about more of a stronger demonic force a lot of times. But when you're talking about humans, I don't think they can interact with you on that level. That maybe they can pull your hair, maybe they can touch you, maybe you can feel them tap you. But again, that has to do with energy. That has to do with taking things from around them that's in our frame, like things that we can actually measure, like electromagnetic fields. People think that's a word that's created by paranormal investigators to sound smart, but really it's actually something that functions with plumbers and electricians. And of course, like I said, there's natural electromagnetic fields in the earth as well. And they use all of that to try to build up as much energy as possible in order to interact with us on our level into something that we can feel. So I believe it has to do with electromagnetic fields. It has to do with the energy that they take from around them, man-made, natural, in order to manifest. But the stronger the interaction, the more malicious the interaction, then I believe we're dealing with something that's a lot more powerful on its own, doesn't need to build energy from the things around us, that because it's, a spiritual force that we're dealing with that could be demonic. So, it's kind of depends. But again, this is my opinion. I'm not saying that I'm right. You could hear a lot of different opinions about it, but this is just what I believe and what I've come to find on my investigations.
And we have a question from KJ in the SOR Space Travelers Club, and she is asking, in all of your paranormal research, have you ever come across extraterrestrial contact?
Me personally, I have not. I actually am one of those paranormal investigators where I believe in ghosts. I'm still very skeptical. I don't believe everything that I see is a ghost. I don't walk into a place and automatically think that it's haunted. In fact, I've, come to many conclusions many times that there really wasn't a haunting going on at the location. I mean, that for me is more normal than actually finding something. So I'm still I still have that little skepticism about me, but, when it comes to aliens, I'm not 100% sure. I'm agnostic when it comes to aliens. I don't not believe, because I think there has to be something more out there. Otherwise, why would God create billions and billions and billions of planets and stars and, all these different cosmoses just for us? So there's got to be something more out there, but I haven't had any personal experiences that I know of. I mean, there might have been experiences that I had and I didn't realize that it had, to do with aliens or UFOs or extraterrestrials. I mean, because a lot of people say aliens are already among us, that aliens look human. So who knows? I might have been talking to a whole bunch of different aliens and never know it, and I'm not saying that, slapstick wise. I mean, I'm honestly saying I don't know if I have or not. The Paulding Lights, which is also in my book, Ghost in the Coal Cellar, one of the theories behind the Paulding Lights, which is something that I researched, one of the theories is extraterrestrial, that they are extraterrestrial lights. So, that is, I guess I had kind of like a close encounter in that way. I personally believe it's more on the paranormal than extraterrestrial, but I haven't had what I can say is an extraterrestrial experience. I'm not 100% sure I believe in aliens yet, but I am also not discounting the fact that they could be out there. I'm not discounting the things that I have heard from other people who are very believable people. They aren't people that seem to be lying to me. They you could see in their faces that, the tears in their eyes, that they truly honestly believe what they're talking about when it comes to abduction or actually coming face to face with what they believed was an alien or a UFO. So I don't discount it. I'm not saying that I never had one. I'm saying maybe I had one, but they were hidden, or maybe they were posing as human. I don't know. It's always in the realm of possibilities. When you're dealing with the paranormal, anything could be possible, and we just don't know it yet.
Well, as an alien experiencer, I will tell you they are 100% true.
Yeah.
Especially when I've had them show up at my window while I'm broadcasting. That's not fun.
Yeah. Are they like the ones with the big eyes, or are they human looking?
Let's see. I've seen 5 extraterrestrials wide awake. 4 of them have been grays. 1 was a larger gray. 3 were the little grays. I actually woke up on the table right before they implanted me. And the first one that I saw in April of 2014, he was about 10 to 12 foot high. I don't even know how to describe him.
Kind of like what they talked about, like fire in the sky kind of type?
Not that evil looking.
No.
This was a very benevolent type being.
Because no, I've heard that there are people, because like I said, I don't discount it. I've never had an experience, so I can't say that I believe just because I'm one of these, I got to see it to believe it types. That's how I was with the ghosts. I didn't believe it until I had my experience. But I have heard that people have said there are aliens among us that are either disguised as humans or have possibly interlaced their species with humans and look human, or, are somehow they have a human form where they could pass as human. Have you ever experienced that?
I haven't seen one as a human that I would know. I do know that in research that they are out there that you wouldn't even know. Okay, I have met one extraterrestrial. He will be on tomorrow night. And, it's very hard for him to come out. He actually gave me a couple signs to prove to me that he is what he says he is. And he goes by Audrey. And some of the features that he has shown me privately, and I haven't asked him if I could talk publicly about it, so I don't.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I don't talk publicly about it because he's got to watch himself. But it has really made me kind of cringe in a way of, oh my God, not out of fear, but out of the way like, oh my God, this is real. This is like, I would never expect that, you know. And it's funny talking to him because he doesn't even show emotion.
Really? Is he he doesn't show emotion as in he's not capable of human emotion, or just doesn't know how to express human emotion?
I don't think he knows how to express it. Like when you talk with him, it's very monotone. His levels never go up. They never go down. He never gets excited. He never gets down. Like his voice is always strictly the same. It just never changes. And to me, that's kind of weird, because when people speak to you on a human level, like we're speaking tonight. I mean, when you get emotional about something, your voice gets a little bit higher. You speak a little bit faster, know. But this is straight, even keel, straight across the board. And there will be detractors out there, as there are in this field, by saying, people saying, "Oh, he doesn't exist," or he doesn't want to. This isn't true. Somebody's pulling your leg.
Or he's crazy.
Dave.
He's crazy.
Exactly.
They'll say, he's mentally unstable and that he needs to be medicated. Like we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I will say this, and I'm going to keep this very quiet. I have seen a body part of his that he showed me on a Skype conversation that if you looked at it, it would be totally unbelievable.
Yeah. And
that's what has me convinced that I'm talking to the real deal here. And it's hard to accept. I still struggle with that. I still struggle with it. But what do you do?
Exactly. I always kind of jokingly say, I'm more than open for the existence of aliens, because I've pretty much exhausted all of my efforts finding a good guy here on Earth. So, it'd be kind of nice if there were, human-esque alien guys that are single. Maybe I'll find somebody that meets, my personality and my eccentricities, So I'm more than open to the fact that they could exist. I haven't had that experience. Maybe when I listen to the show when Audrey's on, and, I can maybe experience a little bit of it then. But like going back to the person who asked the question, I can't say that I've ever had that experience. And so my mind still is in that, well, there is that possibility, but I don't know because I haven't actually witnessed it myself. So, I'm not closed. Like I said, I used to be closed-minded to everything. Bigfoot, ghosts, the Loch Ness Monster, aliens. But after my very first experience, that made me re-question everything in my life. I was even I believed in God. I believed in Jesus. And, but I was one of those, they had to force me to go to church. They had to force me to, because I'd rather sleep on Sunday. and I didn't feel the connection. Like there wasn't a connection with God. I didn't pray. I never prayed. Like the last time I prayed, I was a little kid. And then after this experience, that actually brought me back to my religion. You know, it brought me back to being a better Catholic. I pray all the time now, and I use my faith to help other people. So I'm one of these, like, you got to be baptized by fire, I guess. You know, like if I had the experience, I'll accept it. You know, I accept that it's possible now, but I still kind of want to experience it for myself. I want to meet one. I want to talk to one. I want to see something. I mean, I've seen something in the sky that I 100% cannot say, you know, it wasn't a shooting star, because shooting stars don't go very slowly and then all of a sudden pick up speed, and then shoot back in the other direction like a boomerang, you know. So, and I've witnessed something like that before. So that, you know, I can't explain, but I want to see more before I can honestly say, okay, yeah, I completely 100% undeniably believe in aliens. I mean, that's just me, but I'm open to it. And I would love to learn more, and I would love to experience it. And I'd love to talk to somebody, you know, who's had experiences, like Mr. Walton from Fire. I'd love to interview him. I'd love to pick his brain. I'd love to, you know, listen to your next show when you have Audrey on, and just listen to, you know, all of that, you know, and to see if I could have that experience that I've been looking for.
Couple more, or another question from the SOR Space Travelers Club. This one comes from J.A., and J.A. is asking, do you think, Andrea, more than one spirit can have the same agenda, such as exposing a secret motive behind their unsolved murder?
That more than one spirit at the same time for the same thing? Is that what J.A. means?
Yes.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there have been many cases where, I mean, I obviously don't investigate murders myself. You know, that would be very sad for me to do. If I ever had to, I would. But when, like, for example, if we're talking about like a lot of psychics or people who are empathic that have helped the police, and they do it on the down low, they're not like, you know, they don't like to advertise the fact that they do this. They kind of do it on the down low, but they have investigated, and they have said that, you know, multiple spirits reach out to them. In fact, spirits that aren't even related to the case, like maybe they were already haunting the location when it happened, and they were witnesses. You know, like you have a witness to like somebody stealing. Let's say you walk into a convenience store and there's somebody stealing a candy bar and running out the store, and you tell the police what the person looked like, what they were wearing. You know, you're a witness to that event. Well, you know, the spirit, she said at this one point, was a witness to this very unfortunate event. And she was able to bring not only the person that was still there, the victim that was still there, who was trying to tell her story, but then there was a witness that came forth to corroborate that story. And then she went to the police and said, you know, told the police everything that she knew from these two different spirits that were coming to her that were completely unrelated. One was the victim, one was a witness. And they were actually able, after the fact, maybe I think within a month, to find the person who, it was a hit and run accident. The person took off, but they were able to find the person that did it and charge them with vehicular manslaughter after the fact. So I do believe that spirits, even unrelated to each other, can come together. I mean, at the museum that I'm currently, I was working on ghost tours at this one particular museum. And there are multiple spirits there. They're not related to each other. They have no connection to each other. They're there for whatever reason, whether they came in with an item that's at the museum, or it's an area that they've lived and they wanted to stay there, or that's a place where they died, because at one time it was a hospital. You know, but they're all there for their own different reasons, and they do interact with one another. I mean, I have multiple EVPs of interactions between the spirits. You know, it's not always friendly, and sometimes, you know, they seem to have their arguments, but they do come together a lot of times for a shared purpose, or they actually will commune together as like almost like a mini family, like an afterlife family, trying to figure out where to go from here, or, you know, so it is very possible for that to happen, at least that what I've come to experience and research.
You mentioned psychics.
Yeah.
And lately I've actually gone off, and I don't mean to harp on this topic lately, because I have a lot of really good psychic friends, as I think anybody in this field does. And there are certain ones that you trust with their opinion and their knowledge, because for some reason they can just read you perfectly. Samantha Mowat Samantha Mowat, who does an ET show with us the second Tuesday of every month, is one of those people for me, and she was actually over at my house just a couple of nights ago helping me out because I've been having a kind of a tough time with some things. Anyhow, long story short, where do you put in the group of paranormal activity and paranormal research, where do you put psychics on a pedestal? Because there's some groups out there who believe that they shouldn't investigate without a psychic. There are groups out there who say that a psychic is no good in the paranormal field. Where do you stand?
I am the kind of person who will accept anybody that's interested in the paranormal to come with me, and I use them to the best of my abilities because I'm curious. I mean, it is something that I am curious about because I've had that, issues myself where I've had dreams that have come true. Or sometimes like waking, and for example, somebody was asking me if I was psychic in one of my ghost tours. Cause that's whenever you deal with the paranormal, the first thing they think is if you're a paranormal investigator, you're also psychic and that you dabble in all of this other stuff. And I was trying to tell her, well, I can sometimes when a spirit's around, I can sense when they're around and I can sense if they're malicious or, I could sense their kind of, what they're there for, their purpose. But I can't stand there. And there's this girl, I mean, she looked like she was about 14 years old. I didn't realize that she was already in her 20s. I mean, she was just, God, I wish I could look that young still. I mean, but I thought she was there. She was there with her mom because nobody under 18 is permitted. So I thought she dragged her mom with her because she was underage. So I'm like, I can't look at you and say there's a guy there. And all of a sudden it popped into my head. There's a guy with a J. He's crossed over. It's a J. It's a J name. Like, John Edwards does. It's a J. It's a J name. And he's tall and he's kind of he's thin, but he's muscular, but he's lean. And he's got mousy brown hair. It's all messed on top, but he's got a perfectly, trimmed mustache. And, he's crossed over. He's standing by the young girl. And she kept getting paler and paler and paler. And finally I'm like, is everything okay? And she's like, well, I'm a widow. And I was like shocked because, at first I thought, like I said, she was a teenager, but she said, I'm a widow. My husband's name was Jeremiah, which is obviously a J name. He was tall and he was, thin, muscular, but lean. And he did have, brown hair, kind of messy. And towards the end of his life, before he died, he had, a nice mustache growing in that he, used to trim up and that looked like a little nice mustache. And I never even thought about it, but after the fact, when we exchanged Facebook pages, and I kind of went and I looked at pictures and I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly who I saw, and it's not something I can control. So I'm open to the fact that there are psychics out there and that there are psychics that do have talent. And I truly believe in like a lot of my friends who are psychic mediums. I've, tested them and I really do have a deep understanding of them. And they're not kind that will predict the future. They're not the ones that say, well, in 4 years, you're going to find this guy and he's going to be, they're the kind that actually will tell you, look, this is, you've been like missing these lessons. I want you to learn these lessons that you're avoiding. And they're more of trying to make you realize something about yourself more than telling about the future. And that's what I like about these particular ones is that they can connect with the spirit world and kind of put you on the right path rather than give you your lotto numbers, like try to tell you things that'll happen 10 years from now. And who knows if you'd actually be around to actually see if it would come true or not. They are more like, trying to build you up spiritually and, build your character up and, push you forward. So if I have a good psychic medium that I do trust, I will bring them in there, and I will see what they say. But I like to do what's called dry reading. I'll bring them in there and I won't tell them a single thing about what's going on. I won't tell them about anything that the family has told me. I won't even tell them anything about the history of the house. And then I let them go and do what they feel like they have to do. And then when they give me their report after they've walked through the house, I'll compare it. I'll see this is what they're telling me. This is what she's telling me without absolutely any kind of push to where this is what you should be seeing or not. And, and see kind of mesh it in that way. So I kind of do, I don't mind I don't have them on a regular basis. That's not really my thing. I like to go in and I like to try to do different experiments to try and communicate and try to get manipulation objects like balls to move, or I like to they have that Boo Bear now, and I've made my own version of the Boo Bear that, is a little less sensitive and talky, where it doesn't just talk out of nowhere for no reason. And I like to do things like that. I like to kind of do experimentation, things that I can physically, tangibly see and feel and experience. But if there is a group that I'm working with and they do have a psychic, I do kind of pick their brain just to, kind of experiment with it. I'm open to all sorts of different techniques, except me personally, again, the only thing I won't do is a Ouija board. I don't say that you can't use it on an investigation, but I will leave before it's brought out. I'll ask to excuse myself from the building once they bring it out. But with psychics, yeah, I've used psychics. I don't rely on them. I don't put them on a pedestal as a must-have. But, I'm more than open and willing to have them on an investigation with me.
I think my biggest issue right now with anybody who is psychic is the fact of this. And I'm making a pregnant pause there because I'm trying to build up the emotion to the moment. No,
there you go.
But seriously, I have dealt with a lot of psychics, and like I said, there's some that I trust, and I won't bring a psychic on this show to do any sort of reading unless I get a reading first. Because I need to know how accurate they are. And here is something that in my own little non-scientific study that I have noticed. It is amazing how gifted some of these people are.
Yeah.
But to me, here's the difference that I've noticed. They are very gifted for the most part, and I'm not saying all. I know I'm lumping all psychics when I say they. But for the most part, most of them are very gifted at predicting anything that is negative or gloomy that is coming through. They can predict that quicker than a Democratic convention can pick Hillary.
Yeah.
But when it comes to something positive coming, whether it's money, whether it's love, whether it's an opportunity of a lifetime, whatever it may be. Maybe it's finding that new house or that roommate that's needed to help pay rent. Have you ever noticed that everything is always 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 months away? And then when you finally get to that timeline that they said, it's another 4, 6, 8, 10 months away.
Yeah.
I am so sick of that.
I know.
That
And that's okay. The psychic mediums that I know personally, like for example, one she's really sweet person, sweet girl, but she even tells me, she's like, don't ask questions like, when am I going to find love? Who is it going to be? Like, can you tell me the name of she goes, that removes your free will. The whole point of our lives is that we have free will, and anything can change our path of destiny. We're not written in stone. So if you're asking me to tell you 4 years from now if you're going to finally meet Mr. Right, she's like, nothing can predict that, because I could see somebody that you could be dating and then you decide to latch on to that guy, and then it turns out, maybe see something else in the future, like, oh, that's not going to work out. She's like, it's all about free will. And that's what I really love about her, is that she's not doom and gloom. And the ones that I know, they're not doom and gloom. In fact, I know one particular gentleman that I've spoken to on many occasions. He's never given me anything doom and gloom. What he does is he gives me something that uplifts me, that actually makes me feel better about myself, better about the situation, better about the world around me, makes me feel like I'm protected, because I know that, like, he knows something about a couple relatives of mine that had passed away. They were already crossed over, that nobody else could possibly have known. He said, your grandmother wants you to know. And he just said, he goes, it's your grandmother, and she wants you to know she's fine, and she's with her sisters playing cards. And that's, that's something that nobody knows, that my grandmother and her sisters used to play cards every Saturday. And it was a Saturday when he was telling me, when, he gave me that, that message. He's like, he goes, she just wants you to know she's fine. She wants you to know your father's fine. And that, she and her sister are playing cards right now. And, so it's very upbeat, and it's not all doom and gloom. And that's why you have to, it's kind of fun to go to a psychic to, to talk to them and see what they're talking about. But I don't like to go and get my future predicted, because like one of my friends said, that takes away your free will. And it's all about your free will. Don't worry about what's going to be happening 10 years from now, because life paths change all the time because of free will. And you shouldn't want to know that far into the future, because it removes your ability to live your life, because you're so focused and you're trying to, you actually set yourself up to fail at that point. But you do have a lot of the doom and gloom psychics, the doomsdayers, the ones that'll predict the end of the world, the ones that say an asteroid's coming for you, in the year 2016, and and obviously they're proven wrong. I mean, they set themselves up to be proven wrong, but that's why you gotta kind of be careful, and you gotta test them. It's like in the Bible, it says, test your spirits. Don't trust every spirit that comes with you. Test them to make sure they're from God. And so if you're talking to somebody who says they're psychic medium, you test them, and you see, what kind of messages are they getting, and who are they truly receiving it from. So like I said, I don't put psychic mediums on a pedestal. But at the same time, I have some friends that I really do truly believe are gifted, and they've helped me a lot with, the things that I've gone through, where I've, had diarrhea of the mouth and have said something that turned out to be accurate, or have had dreams and woken up and the next day they actually occur, and they've been very, positive and uplifting and guiding me along the way when it comes to something like that. But you have to, just when you're dealing with the paranormal, of anything, whether you're dealing with aliens or ghosts or psychics, or you just have to be careful and protect yourself.
Exactly. And you know what? Use it for entertainment purposes. Because in the end, a lot of psychic people, they're good people who have a gift.
Yep.
And too many people become reliant on what a psychic says, and that's a lot of pressure.
Yep.
That's a lot of pressure on the people who are getting the messages, because in the end, they know they're not going to be 100% accurate. They know they're probably not going to be 70 or 80% accurate. But the one thing that they can do is relay a message. Whether or not you do something with it, it's still your free will. And I think a lot of people forget that. They take the words ad nauseum, or maybe what is said, they don't like what the psychic said, so they go in a different path, not realizing that they're changing the path or the course of the way things are supposed to be. And it does put psychic mediums in a hard position. So if you're going to a psychic medium to try and run your life, that's not their job. That's your job. Because your free will out there is going to dictate whether or not that advice comes true or not.
Exactly.
If they're any good, right?
And we're static. We're static people. We don't stand still. Our lives are not written in stone. That's the whole point of free will. Free will gives us a choice. And if we're just saying, the psychic medium tells you, say that, oh, well, you should be getting this job in a year. Well, that's the one thing that she's seeing. But what about the 3 job offers coming through that she didn't see that might actually be better? It doesn't mean that she's wrong, but another opportunity presents itself and you decide to go, against the grain. I mean, you can't live your life based on what they say. Like my one friend says, it's all about free will. She can guide you. She can tell you what she sees, but that doesn't mean you should just live your life in a hole until you meet a guy named Fred, wearing a red coat, because maybe you're passing up on a whole bunch of other guys that she, didn't come through at that time. That's the whole point of free will. Free will is you got to live your life.
Cog is asking a question in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. He's asking, Andrea, how do you test the spirits to know they're real?
What do you mean, how do you test them? Oh, to know they're real? Like, oh, is he referring to like test the spirit? Like when I said test the spirits?
Yes.
Okay, it went test the spirits from a biblical standpoint. And again, I'm going to bring the Bible into it, so I do apologize to anybody who finds that offensive, but everyone's offended by something. But biblically, when you're talking about testing the spirits to see if they are from God, what I believe, and I've encountered this on many occasions, a demon that wants to try to attach itself to you is always going to pose as your great-great-great-grandmom, and they know things about you and your family that maybe, you know, you don't even realize, and then you research and it turns out to be true. And, you know, they have all of these little tricks to get you to lower your guard and accept them in, because the one thing they need is that invitation to come into your life and run your life. And so they try to lower your guard by acting like your sweet grandma who passed over, and you know, and so you kind of have to say, well, okay, well, if you were, you know, like test them a little bit, like say, okay, well, find out things that, well, do you know this? Do you know that? Do you know this? And see if they come up with those answers, or if any answers seem off for some reason, and then bring God into it. I bring God a lot of times when I start talking, because then all of a sudden you notice a change. They try to act like, oh, I am a religious spirit, I believe in God, but then their mentality, because they have such a deep-seated hate for God, in the demonic, I mean, the whole point demons is that they just hate God that much, because, you know, God banished them, and they've actually become so twisted and evil because of the fact that they hate God, that the more you tweak them and try to get them to proclaim God and to proclaim Christ and to say, you know, and to praise God, they get to a point where they just refuse to do it. And then all of a sudden their true colors come forth. So, you know, you have to that's where I say I bring God into it, and I see just how far they're willing to go until they crack. You know, and if they don't crack, and if they do say, I believe in God and I want to cross over, and I don't know how to cross over, if they're not showing any signs of cracking under the name of God, then I know sometimes we might be dealing with a human spirit. But like if you get a vicious pullback towards, like, you know, where they just crack and then it starts to get kind of malicious and they start to curse or they start to fight back, well, then you know you've caught them posing as something benevolent when they're really not. And so that's how I test the spirits. When I say test the spirits, I'm talking more in a biblical sense.
We're going to get into demons in the next hour here, and I'm just kind of setting that up. For a lot of people, there are questions in regards to whether or not how they can trust someone in the paranormal field, how they can trust, you know, an investigative team, or trust a psychic medium for that point, or anything along those lines. How would you define to someone who is searching for these teams to maybe come in and help at a place of business or a residence, to define the good from the bad?
Well, for one thing, never be afraid to ask for references, because a lot of times I have clients that, while they don't want, obviously, their, you know, experiences, their names, or where they live, they will like say, yes, this person did come in and help me, and I really believe and trust in them, and they will say, you know, they did help. You can do background checks now. It's so easy to go online and do background checks, and, you know, make sure you're not dealing, because I had actually one time where I did, somebody did do a background check when they called me in to do an investigation, because they had another investigative group, and this was, you know, and I forgot which state it was. I want to say it was somewhere out west a little bit. And they found out that they'd been convicted of theft. They've been convicted of breaking and entering into a cemetery and committing vandalism. So obviously background checks are very helpful. And then ask the questions. Find out, like, do some research online about the defendant and ask them and find out how knowledgeable that they are. Like, you know, does it sound like they're BSing? Like, does it sound like they're just pulling it out of a hat, you know, and trying to come up with something? Or does it sound like somebody who actually has been doing this and has the experience and the knowledge and the understanding? And then just know one thing is, I would say 99% of paranormal groups, especially the paranormal groups that are out there right now, 99% are not equipped to do cleansings. They can come in and they can give you like, well, yeah, here's evidence that something is going on in your home, and then lead you to the right place in order to get help for the actual ridding of the spirit. But most investigative groups, if they tell you that they can cleanse your home personally and rid you of the spirit, I'd be very wary. I would look at how long that they've been doing this, what kind of a background they have that makes them think that they, can be cleansing. Did they study theology? Did they work with priests or other, religious clergy of various different religions? What, have they done to verify that they're able to cleanse a home without making a situation worse? I would really do research on that. Like me personally, I never did cleansings by myself before until I actually worked with priests across the country and, those who have been exorcists in their diocese. And, they've taught me layman's prayers that, I can do to help a person, especially with human spirits. But when it comes to the demonic, I still don't go it alone. I will not try to cleanse a home of a demonic spirit without the help of a priest, of the exorcist of the diocese, if possible, to come in and help with the cleansing. Because I know I can't do that. I know I'm not ready for something like that on my own. I'll always refer, or sometimes I'll go to other demonologists that I have, that I know really well, that I've worked with before, who have been doing this for years and years and years. I mean, Ralph Sarchi is one name that pops up. He's an excellent demonologist. And so I'll go to him for advice if I need to. So I don't do it alone myself either, unless we're talking about a human spirit, which in itself, anyone can tell the human spirit, it's time to go, if you talk to them on their level. But be very careful. Just do your due diligence. Just research the group, research the person, do the background checks, ask them questions and see if they have knowledge, and find out if they say they can cleanse homes. Find out what their credentials for saying that is. Like, find out what kind of experiences they've had. Find out, why, what kind of way do they cleanse and how has it worked, and see if you can get references.
We have a question from Eric in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. He is asking, Andrea, do you find the prayer to St. Michael to be quite effective?
I do. I actually carry a little card. I have a St. Michael card, a St. Michael medal. For those who may not know, St. Michael, the Archangel, is actually one of the patron saints of demonologists, paranormal investigators, and exorcists. So I do carry a little card that has the prayer on it, and I put it in my back pocket, and I have it with me at all times. I actually use that to cleanse myself going in and going out, so that I try to avoid any attachments to myself. I make sure that, my guardian angel's praying for me, that St. Michael is praying for me, and that I have, that spiritual protection, so that, and I also say no attachment is allowed, because I don't give any invites. Invites is the number one way to get an attachment. So I, do these prayers. I have my holy water. I bless myself going in and out. And I do pray the St. Michael prayer. I find it very powerful, as well as Psalm 91. Psalm 91 is another one I pray all the time when I'm in a very tough situation, paranormal wise. And that's how I protect myself going in and going out, to keep me from getting spiritual attachments. And it also seems to calm down a lot. If there's a lot of activity at a house, I'll say, read the prayer of St. Michael, read Psalm 91 when you're really feeling like things are going to be too much. And they say they do notice a calming effect in their home. So yes, definitely. I always have the prayer of St. Michael, and I carry my St. Michael medallion with me wherever I go.
What do you say to people, Andrea, who say, I just need the experience. I don't really care. I need to know that this is real. Whether it's paranormal, whether it's extraterrestrial, whether it's crypto, like a Bigfoot experience, they just need to feel something, see something. On this show, we have mentioned a number of times that you really, for most part, most people out there don't really realize, who've never had an experience, that you have to be careful what you wish for. So when somebody comes up to you who's an amateur at this, but they really are drooling for the experience, what's your advice to them?
Well, the one thing that I would definitely say is if you're curious about the paranormal, and that's fantastic. I mean, I say that, I'm not really scared of the paranormal anymore. Even when I go into the demonic, I have a hard time of being overly afraid. I'm just more curious, about different paranormal experiences. And that's fine. I mean, if you're curious and you want to experience it, great. But first of all, never go into somebody's home. One, if you're not experienced and you've never had a paranormal experience and you've never been on an investigation before, don't go messing with people's homes because you're just going to cause trouble there. You're going to stir things up and then leave them with the aftermath. Two, if you want to have an experience, find somebody or that like go to Mackinac Island. There's a place in Michigan called Mackinac Island. They have haunted everything. I mean, that whole island is, pretty haunted, and you can go on paranormal investigations, and they have like leaders in a group that will explain to you what they're doing, explain to you the different types of hauntings. They'll explain to you the equipment they're using, and then they'll actually have you go and perform an investigation. And it's in a place where they know the spirits, nobody's been hurt. The spirits are fairly, they like to kind of play jokes on people. And I wrote about it again in my book, plugging it one more time, Ghost in the Coal Cellar. A hilarious experience happened on Mackinac Island at this particular theater that's haunted. But go to places like that, take ghost tours, or talk to your local paranormal group, like a real trusted paranormal group. Again, do your research and make sure you're finding a reputable group, and ask if you can shadow them on an investigation of, say, a hotel or, a business or something where you're not dealing with a terrified client that wants, help. Because when you're dealing with a client that really wants help, that shouldn't be your learning experience. That shouldn't be the place that you're going to, have your moment. That's strictly, you have to be there to help that person. So that's not a good place to do it. If you're going to go to a haunted, go to the Stanley Hotel. Go, like I said, to Mackinac Island and stay at the Straits Lodge at Mission Point Resort, or do the theater at Mission Point Resort. Go to those places that are public where people are welcome to come and have their experiences. And then, start there and then make that your starting point. And then if you have that experience and you want to learn more, then go to investigative groups and see what they can teach you and see if they can have you shadow them on easier cases or on cases where people are less terrified and are more, curious themselves, and grow as an investigator in that way. But never, ever start in the home of somebody who's scared and looking for answers. That's the one place you should avoid if you're just doing this out of curiosity.
Joe has a question in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, or on Facebook, in the SOR Space Travelers. He is asking, if a place is haunted, then it burns down, do the spirits, in your opinion, remain there?
It depends. Again, when we're talking about residual hauntings, they do remain, because a residual haunting has a lot to do with psychic energy and not so much a physical spirit. I actually dealt with a case that they were having, it used to be a 2-story house, but then they turned it into a ranch after a fire had destroyed the attic area. And yet they still saw this teenage boy walking upstairs that no longer exist and disappearing into the ceiling. Well, they actually did the research. We were able to find who the boy was, and the boy was actually an old guy living in Florida. And he was still alive. He was living in a retirement community with his wife. They showed him the picture that they found of who was haunting their house, and he verified that was him. And he actually went through an album and showed them other pictures of him as a teenager, and they were able to say that is the guy. So residual haunting doesn't necessarily have to do with somebody who's dead and a ghost. It's psychic energy. When we're talking about human hauntings, when we're talking about the intelligent hauntings, if the place is destroyed, now just like us, I believe spirits aren't stuck. I mean, the reason they're stuck is in their heads. They want to be reminded of things of their mortality. They don't want to be reminded that they're dead. So they kind of attach themselves to people or to objects that remind them of their mortality. Now, if that is destroyed, then I do believe that some of them can pick up and leave. But a lot of times they don't. Sometimes they're attached to that property, or they're attached to that place, or they're hoping that somebody will come and rebuild, and they just refuse to go for whatever their reasons. So yes, there is a chance that they can leave. Because I do believe, like I said, and when it came to my first haunting, that spirit, I never had a paranormal experience in that. That was my childhood home. I grew up there. I lived there all my life. Never had an experience. All of a sudden, a spirit was able to travel to my house, come into my house, and I had an experience. So it obviously traveled there. So I do believe that spirits can detach themselves from a location and move on and haunt somebody else's house. Like if that house burns down and is never rebuilt, but there's a house next door, maybe they'll just go next door. But a lot of times, too, they are stuck there for whatever reason. And, sometimes the area has to be cleansed to let the spirits go free. It just depends on the spirit and how much they understand about the world that they're now living. Do they understand that they're dead? Do they understand that they're free to come and go? Do they, what is their level of understanding? Or what is their attachment to the property? So, yes, they can remain, and yes, they can go. Spirits are just like people. They have their moods. They have their beliefs. They have their, like I said, they could be PMSing and just have a bad day and not want nothing to do with nobody. I mean, they have personalities just like we do. And so they're unpredictable. So you can't really predict what they would do if a place burnt down that they were haunting.
Shar is asking in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, do you think child spirits are stuck, or is it something pretending to be a child?
I've always said to myself that I can't believe that God would allow a little child spirit to remain. But you know what? God has a reason for everything. Like I said, my first paranormal experience, I believe, was a wake-up call to return to God, and to return to religion. I believe that that's why I had these experiences, because it was a message to me. Just like I believe, like sometimes when I have these dreams and I wake up and they come true, they're inane things. Like I dreamt of a guy named Dave calling me, and then a guy named Dave calls me. I mean, it's inane, but yet it makes me think, and it kind of reminds me of maybe God's trying to tell me something, So is it possible that children's spirits do remain here? I firmly believe that they do. I actually encountered a full body apparition of a child spirit. And it was in a location where there was a malicious entity. And they called the malicious entity the shepherd. And it was one of those where they tried to release the children. They tried to let the children go free. They were like saying, oh, let's go outside and play and get out of the realm of where the shepherd kind of goes. And as soon as they were ready to go out and take the children to play and then release their spirits, the door slammed shut, like saying, no, the children aren't going to be allowed to leave. And this is in the location where I had my very first attack, where it felt like something was choking me. And after I left the room where that happened, we had a lot of activity in that room, and it was time, to change up groups and let somebody else go in that room while I kind of left and, took a break. And I placed my recorder down, and when I listened to it afterwards, when I had actually left that room after that attack, I actually heard a child's voice, and it was clearly a child's voice. And it was almost a relieved sigh, like, okay, hey, you're safe. Like, oh my God, thank God you're safe. You're out of there. You're safe now. And it was, like I said, a child spirit. And earlier that night, I had seen a full body apparition of a child. And we do believe that there were children spirits stuck there, that there's a malicious entity that wasn't allowing them to leave. But it was a child that was actually relieved that I was okay. It wasn't something that was trying to hurt me. It was something that was trying to get me away from something that was trying to hurt me. So do I necessarily believe that all children's spirits are children? No. I do believe that they try to manipulate. And like I said, a demon will do whatever they can to tug at your heartstrings to get that invite. Going as far as to posing as a child that wants you just to take them in and love them and care for them, and, invite them in to be like your spirit child. That has happened. But I do believe that sometimes there are children's spirit for whatever reason. They die suddenly and they don't understand that they're dead, and they're not taken right away as a lesson for us.
And on that note, we're going to hop out for our final break of the night. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. Andrea Mesich is our guest. We'll be right back.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with the UFOR On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Space Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the show, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, Euphoria Chronicles, James Borg and his Pleiadian friend Audrey will join us. Yes, I have scoped Audrey, and I truly believe Audrey is not of this planet. Tomorrow night, if you want to hear some alien chatter on the mighty SOR, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. If you want to follow us on Twitter, because you're a social media junkie like I am, do so by going to @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. You can find our YouTube channel at Spaced Out Radio Show. That's where we store our archives. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, take the time to sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club. It's only $5 a month. And with that, you get access to a private group interviews. You get a private section for your postings on our website, and so much more. You can check out our resident guitar god, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, who takes care of all of Spaced Out Radio's musical needs. You can check out the SOR Space Wire, the weird, the wacky, and the absurd in the news from our news director, Eric Markham, as well. Check out our latest blog section as well. I write every week. This week I've written on how depression and anxiety helps me with this show. Or maybe it's the other way around. This show helps me with my depression and anxiety. That's probably more logical. Tonight we are talking with Andrea Mesich. She is known as the Paranormal Ronin because she likes that title. Andrea, welcome back.
I thank you.
It's always good to have you on the show. You know, we appreciate you doing this. We really do. You've been a fantastic guest, and we have another 55 minutes with you, so I'm excited about it. I know our audience is as well. We've been talking a lot about paranormal groups and the good, the bad. You've had to deal with some of the ugly and cleaning up other paranormal groups' messes. I would love for you to expand on that. What do you mean when you say that you've actually had to go in and clean up the mess left by other paranormal groups?
Well, without going into like calling people out or anything like that, because I don't do that. But I actually had a client that had come to me. She had gone in and had a local paranormal investigative group. They were new. They were starting to advertise. They put up flyers. They said, oh, we deal with ghosts of every sort, and, we can find you answers, and we can get you the proof that you need. And we believe you. We know you're not crazy. And she's like, well, they're saying everything that I've been, waiting to hear. And, she goes, because everyone keeps telling me I'm crazy. And they're telling me, no, I believe you. I know you're not crazy. And, so they come in and they say, we're going to try to get evidence of, a spirit. So, they kick her out of the house, basically. I'm always the type of person, I know a lot of people don't want to be there because sometimes they feel like they're going to be targets of the spirits for bringing help in. But a lot of times if they want to be there during the process because, they're the ones experiencing it, I have no problem with them being there at the time. But they kicked her out. And when she came back, they said, okay, we're going to go review our evidence. And then they'd go back and they'd say, oh, we found this and we found that. And she's like, yeah, but after you left, things got really bad. And she's like, it's been like, it's been keeping me up at night. It seems like it's angry. It's, things are really bad have been happening. My kids are terrified. And they'll say, oh, well, there's really nothing we can do about it. We don't cleanse homes. And she'll be like, well, what did you do? And they're like, oh, well, we did an investigation. And, so then she'll call me and, she said, can you please come and help me? And then she'd give me the evidence or that they collected that they gave her. And I'd listen through it and I would be hearing them basically just, I mean, kind of like, I'd say going crazy, like making jokes about it or like, calling it names, like, like cussing at it, swearing at the spirits, kind of like, just kind of like kind of getting things all riled up and then abandoning her after they got what they wanted and they got this proof that they think is, going to, they're like, oh, well, this would be really great. Like, they even asked her, can you sign off so that we can use this if we pitch a reality idea to a network or to, a production company? And she's absolutely not. And so then, I come in and it's bad. I come in and I get scratched or I get pushed or she's in tears. She's huddled in a corner. Her children are just terrified. They don't want to sleep there. So, she and her husband and the kids have been, kind of shacking up at a hotel because they don't want to be in the house anymore because things have got so stirred up because these people are going in there having fun, trying to get what they can get to get on TV. And I'm the one who has to go in there and then I'm the one who gets scratched. I'm the one who gets pushed. I'm the one who's now there to help. And they're already ticked off about the last people that came through. And so they're not happy to see me from the get-go. And so there's a lot more fight back when it comes to me. And because I am more spiritually in tuned, I consider myself empathic because I can feel the spirits around me. I can sense them more and I seem to have more physical interactions with them than a normal person. So I get hit double hard. I will get the pushes and the scratches and they will be deep and they will last long and they will hurt. And so I have to go in there and try to clean up what they did. They went in there trying to get something for a reality show they wanted to pitch. And, tried to get her to sign off on because they thought they had this really great evidence that would, make for great TV. And that's why they're playing all of this. Oh, yeah, you blanker. And, I dare you to come and try something to me, you blanker. And then they just abandon her and they leave and say, well, there's nothing we can do now except you just have to accept it. I proved, that there is paranormal in your house. Just deal with it or try to find somebody who can help you if you don't want to. And then they abandon her. And so like I said, I'm the one who comes in and cleans it up because I'm the one who studies this. I'm the demonologist. I'm the one who knows priests in the areas who happen to be exorcists and, who can help her. I'm the one who knows about different things. And so I have to come in, suffer the abuse from not only the spirit world, but now she's untrusting of groups. She doesn't really know what I'm all about. She doesn't 100% trust me after her experience. So, it just makes it so much harder for those of us that are legitimately trying to help people because trust is the number one thing we need with our clients. And when you already have a wall of, I don't trust you because of what they did, it makes it very harder for me to do my job. And then top it off with pissed off spirits that are not happy with me right now. So, it makes it difficult, but it's what I do. It's my vocation. I do it anyway, regardless of how hard it is. But I would just like it if these groups would start, doing their job and not making a bigger mess for me.
And I can totally see that. And that's something that we talked about ad nauseum probably in hour number 1 in regards to, I mean, this is a classic example of exactly what is wrong with the paranormal field. Like that group was confident in saying, we did our job. We proved your home is haunted. Well,
now what?
Yeah, now what? Do you find, though, like, if you get to a scenario on time or a scene on time, do you find that the spirit maybe wanting to move on, maybe?
Oh, yes. In fact, I just dealt with this. In fact, I have this one client that actually has spirits are coming in and out of her home because I think she has more of a psychic power, I think she is psychic and that she can see spirits and the spirits know, and so they kind of attach to her. But she sees spirits. It's like we just got her to hang a cross. We had a cross that was blessed, and we got her to hang it in her house. And there were spirits there she said that she could see them standing at the cross like they were contemplating it. They weren't like, mocking it. They weren't trying to scare her. It was like they were praying at the foot of the cross. So when we came in and we did a blessing of the home, and when I say we, I had a priest with me. At one point, as he was blessing, a chair that was at a table, was tucked into a table, jetted out as if someone had pushed back, like backed it out. And I looked at that as a sign that whatever was there finally heard what they needed to get up and be able to leave. And like I told her, I said, you have the power to do this too. If you believe in God, if you have the faith, this is what you can tell them. Don't be scared of them. They're not there to hurt you. I said, right now we have this house protected against anything malicious. They can't get back in here as long as you keep your faith. If you lose your faith, or if you allow fear to run your life, well, you're just inviting them back in. But if you keep your faith and you are very firm and say, look, you don't belong here, and I will pray for you. If you need to move on, I will pray for you that you will find that way to move on and go. They will go. And, I'm trying to give her a little more empowerment because I think she's going to have to deal with this probably the rest of her life because she has these psychic abilities. But there are spirits that don't want to be here. They just don't know how to cross over, and they need somebody to guide them.
It's funny what you do, because one of the groups that is involved with Spaced Out Radio, Forest Moon Paranormal out of Washington State, Eric Cooper is the gentleman's name. His group, he calls his a paranormal emergency group for situations just like you deal with. And it'd be interesting to have both of you on the air at the same time, because he has paranormal investigators spread literally worldwide, whether it's psychic mediums, whether it's remote viewers, whether it's paranormal groups, whoever, to help deal with situations. Do you find that your client list, because of these types of actions, is actually growing as the paranormal community has grown so much larger than it was?
It's definitely growing. And I think a lot of it has to do not just with the paranormal groups themselves. And I think a lot of it, has to do with the TV shows. Again, people who were once afraid to admit that they were having problems are saying now it's mainstream, and now it's kind of cool to have paranormal issues, so they don't feel as afraid to reach out and actually seek the help that they wanted before. Before they were just like, I'm going to get laughed at. People are going to mock me. My family's going to ostracize me. My church is going to, they're going to turn away from me. I can't do this, But then they find out that there are groups out there that are willing to help them, and that they're willing to hold confidentiality. They're not going to go blasting your name and your location all over. Even when I wrote my book, I got express permission from the family of that one little girl I was telling you about the rocking chair, and how she was having this, what they thought was an imaginary friend at first. I got their permission to actually put them in the book, but I still didn't use their name or their location. I changed the names and, where they lived to protect their identity. So they know that they have that confidentiality where they can come forward and get the help. I also think that because the occult is a lot easier accessible online and on smartphones, smartphones, and they even have games now like occult games, like, where you could play the Ouija board on your phone or play tarot cards on your phone. It makes the occult so more accessible that I think that's another reason we're seeing an influx of what we could call demonic activity or paranormal activity. A lot of people also say that the way the world is changing is causing an influx. The way our world is, we're moving away from being united as people. Like even in America, we are so divided as a nation, and that's causing so much, like it's opening almost like a spiritual rift. And that's what's kind of bringing. So I think there's a lot of variables for why the world is getting to be a little bit more active than it was before. But I think the biggest thing is that people are just realizing that there are people out there who can help and are coming forward to tell their stories now, where before they were kind of trapped in silence out of fear from being ridiculed. But I do definitely think there's been a greater influx probably within the last 10 years in the paranormal field. Because when I first started almost 13 years ago now, gosh, I'm coming up to the lucky 13. I was nowhere near as busy as I am now. I mean, it's been crazy. I call this a cursed year. For some reason, it just seems there are more issues this year. I mean, so huge celebrity passings, really big names like David Bowie and Alan Rickman. And, and then you have, people are having it just seems like everyone's having bad luck. And it seems like this year has been a great year for paranormal activity. So I don't know if it has something to do with something going on in the world, but definitely I think there's a lot of reasons. One is the accessibility to information on the paranormal, and people are more open. 2 is the accessibility to the occult via the internet and smartphones, and that can cause trouble. And, 3, just I think a change in the world that's happening is, causing a lot of paranormal issues to happen.
Before we go any further, Bill Cardwell finally showed up to Space Out Radio tonight. He is our resident space traveler, number 1 in our books, number 1 in our hearts. He has set the password for tonight's Space Travelers. It is Cockademon. Cockademon is the password. I probably didn't pronounce that right, but Cockademon is...
Cockdemon?
Cacodemon.
Oh, I thought it was, okay, I spelled that completely wrong.
Not cock-o-demon. Cacademon. Cacademon, okay. I guess. Yes. So that better be worth a big mention on Bill's part. The pressure's on him now to pull on through. I have a couple questions from the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker for you. This one comes from Eric. He is asking, how do you pacify angry spirits? How do you calm them down?
I honestly don't pacify them. If you have an angry spirit that is doing malicious things to a person or in a business or a location, my goal is to get rid of them. My goal is to put them to where they belong. If they're demonic, you send them back to the fiery place down below. If they're just malicious, like I say, people are in death the way they are in life if they remain as spirits. If you were a jerk in death or a jerk in life, you're going to be a jerk in death. So you could be a malicious, but, still human entity. And so then I do still try to send them to where they belong. I send them to whether it's their judgment or whether it's their place of purgatory, if you believe in purgatory as I do, or whether, it's heaven or hell, depending on what they did in their life. That's not for me to judge. That's, between them and God, if they believed in God. But I need to send them there. That needs to be where they have to go. If they're angry, if they need to see the light, they need to understand their situation. They need to deal with it, suck it up, buttercup, and move on your way. You don't want to leave an angry spirit. You don't want to just pacify them and, okay, now they're happy and, everything's fine and you can live in harmony with them. And it's better to... My philosophy is this world is not always fun. I've said myself many times, like if God forbid, like hopefully when I'm 110 years old and I finally am ready to pass, I don't want to stay here as a spirit. I don't want to have to live this whole life again. So, can you imagine, like, if you were born in the 1700s and you're a ghost and the world is changing around you, but you're still the same and the things that you think are still the same, but nothing is the same around you? that has to be a very scary experience. So whether they are a benevolent entity or a malevolent entity, you want to guide them to where they belong, because being stuck here is not a great alternative for them, no matter what it is. And it's not a great alternative for the people who encounter them, because even if they're benevolent and they don't mean harm, they can still scare a person, and they can still, mess with a person's psyche and make them feel, like actually traumatize them. I know somebody who's had an experience absolutely traumatized for life, suffers from depression, suffers from anxiety now ever since this one interaction. So it's best to try to kind of guide them on their way out. But if there's a malicious entity or an angry entity, I don't pacify them. I just lay down the law. I say, this is your situation and this is what's going to have to happen.
Dawn is asking in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, how do you convince them to go to hell?
Yeah, again, we don't convince them to go to hell. What happens, like if you're dealing with the demonic, they know where they're going to have to go anyway. You don't have to convince them. That's just the only place they can go. And that, again, I don't do myself personally. I bring in a priest who has the right. It's a Roman ritual. And me personally, I prefer when we deal with the pre-Vatican II Roman ritual and we're dealing with the Latin, I find it a lot more effective. But that's the priest's area. And they don't convince them to go. They command them in the name of God to go. And in my religion, at least as a Catholic, I believe that God commands all things, and that even the demons here on earth and that are manipulating and causing harm, that, God allows that to some extent for many reasons. And there's many reasons God would allow that, but he never lets a demon do any further than he will allow. And, so if you command in the name of God that they have to go, that they don't have a choice, and you wear them down, you break them down, and eventually they don't have a choice but to obey the command of God. It's not what we're telling them to do. We're not commanding them to go. We're not telling them to go. We're not convincing them to go. We're saying, hey, God is telling you, you can't stay here. And, we're telling them, we're feeding them these prayers, we're feeding them God's word, we're angering them, we're wearing them down until they say that they'll just leave. But it's God, not us. It has nothing to do with us. We're just conveying God's message. And again, it's not convincing, it's commanding by God's name. Like God is commanding them to go, and we're just being God's voice saying, God's telling you to go. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There is no convincing, like, well, hell's such a nice place. It's warm. I mean, when winters here suck, and, you don't have to worry about like 10 feet of snow. It's not that. It's God says you got to go, and you got to get going. And there is no convincing. It's
Just
a command, but it comes from God.
Just snapping them fingers. Get it out. Get out.
Exactly. Yep. It's not, you're not convincing them, you're telling them, but it's not you, it's coming from God. At least, the way I do it and the way I work with the priests who do it.
Follow-up question from Dawn, but if it's not a demon, but just an evil-spirited person, how do you make it happen?
Well, if it's a malicious entity, basically they're still people. You can still reason with them. And they could be angry for many reasons, and they could just be jerks for many reasons. But again, all spirits, like if you believe in religion, all spirits bend to God's will. All spirits have to obey God's command. In the Bible, it says that, every knee shall bend before the cross, whether in heaven, on earth, or below the earth. So, when you're telling them in God's name, they have to move on to their just judgment. They usually will, whether they're malicious or not. But a lot of times you can reason with them. You can say, look, okay, it's scary to move over to the other side. It is. I get it. And you're angry because this is your situation. But you know what? Anything over there's got to be better than what's over here. And just because you think you weren't good enough to make it to heaven doesn't mean that you won't, because God is merciful. So go and see. Reason. You can reason with them. But if they still refuse to go, then it's the same thing as trying to expel a demonic influence by coming in and saying, in the name of God, you don't have a choice.
Eric is wondering, what happens if you have a spirit that on this side was non-Christian? What leverage does a Christian have on those?
Well, you see, when we actually believe that when they've crossed over, they have a better understanding a lot of times than a lot of us have. It's almost like a psychic awakening. And we believe, at least, again, this is my personal belief. This is, the belief that I've had from, years of research and then working with other religions. But I believe that they do have a spiritual awakening, and they do, because I believe in God. I believe God exists. And I think that once they cross over and realize their situation, they realize God exists too. And that they will fall, because like I said, God commands all things, and they will eventually, if they have that spiritual awakening, they will listen to God's command. And sometimes it's not even that far where you have to go that far. Like I said, with human spirits, they were just like us in life, and sometimes reasoning with them, like in the book Ghost in the Coal Cellar, when I was talking about that little girl. They didn't have to have the priest come in and, and bring God into it and say, like, God commands you to leave, by the powers of God compels you, it's like, no, all they said was like, thanks for being here and looking after my children. And I understand that you're here because you miss your wife so desperately, but you realize your wife's not here anymore. Your wife has crossed over. Go be with her. It's okay. We'll be fine. And we'll miss you, and we'll pray for you, and we'll think about you often, because my daughter's gonna, my daughter loved you. She looked at you as a friend, but it's okay to go be with your wife. And then there was a sign that he left, and there was no more paranormal activity after that. So sometimes it's just a matter of talking to them like they were people, because they were people, and to try to be understanding, but to let them know, look, we don't want to be afraid anymore, and we don't want you to be stuck here anymore. Let's just agree to go separate ways. And a lot of times the spirit, they might not cross over, but they will sometimes leave that actual location if they're asked to.
Spear has a question in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, and is asking, have you ever seen any cases where the spirits and the living ended up just kind of getting along? I'll answer that quickly here. August of last year, I actually came face to face with the spirit on my property, because I broadcast out of my house. It was during the Perseid meteor shower, and I had a young lady named Angela Dixon on. We were talking about psychic dreaming that night. And I go outside during one of the breaks to check on the meteor shower, see if I could see any, because I'm a real geek when it comes to that. And I have this tree close to my house in the backyard, and something caught my attention. And I turned my head and looked, and I saw a full-bodied apparition of a man wearing a white T-shirt, kind of the light blue jeans that were almost white, but they weren't white. And I watched him disappear right in front of me. Anyways, next thing I know, I come back on the air and I tell Angela what I saw. And the gentleman, whose name is Richard, but he goes by Rick, actually starts channeling through her at the same time. So we end up having this conversation with this guy. And long story short, he was looking for, she says to me, was there an addition put on your house? And I said, yes. She goes, well, how long ago? I said, I have no idea. The house is 40 years old. Long story short, where the addition was, that's where his workbench was, where he used to work with wood. And he basically said through her that he loves this property and doesn't want to leave, and actually asked me politely if I minded if he stayed. And I said, no, stay all you want. I said, but I need a favor. And he's like, what's that? Through Angela. And I said, I have a small child, and I have a teenager, and I really don't want any big animals coming into the property. I said, the deer I don't mind, but please be wary of the bears and the cougars that are around this area. And if it wasn't a few weeks later, my wife is yelling at me from upstairs, Dave, there's a bear in the yard. And she said, and I never saw the bear, but she said the minute the bear entered our yard, it took off and couldn't get out of our yard fast enough. And literally climbed over the fence as quickly as possible to get out of our yard. So I've always wondered if that was him in doing that. So yes,
I wouldn't doubt it.
I do believe that you can have a peaceful relationship with spirit in your house, or in my case, on the property. How about you?
You know what? I do believe you can. I personally, like I said, I hate the thought of like somebody from like the 1700s and all of a sudden they see cars and airplanes flying through the sky and things just going on around. They're staying the same. And I find that kind of sad. And if they want to move on and they want help to move on, that's my ultimate goal, is to help the people and the spirits as well. But I have heard where people are saying, I don't want you to touch the spirit. I just want, they're not hurt, and and they lived in perfect harmony with the spirit afterwards. And I always said, like somebody actually posted a meme on Facebook. I can't remember which one posted it, and I said this could be possibly true, because I said, I've always been, I'm single. I've had bad luck with guys. I said, and the meme said, maybe there's a spirit that a ghost is in love with me and is using all the guys away, So I mean, who knows? Maybe that's why I have such bad luck with men, because I got a spirit that's in love with me and living in harmony with me, and I don't even know it, and he's just keeping all the good guys away from me because wants me to himself. But no, I think it is possible. I think you never know, and I think it's possible. But I think living in harmony can be possible. But I mean, I just can't believe that a spirit would just want to stay forever in this ever-changing world that's, sometimes worse, sometimes better, and it's just unpredictable. You would think that eventually they will want to cross over one day. They might not be ready right now, but, in the future they might be.
Bill Cardwell has a question in the SOR Space Travelers Club. He is asking, what's worse, in your opinion, a demon or a really pissed-off evil spirit that just won't go away?
God, can you really say worse? I will go ahead and I will say demon, because as pissed off as a human entity can be, and as much havoc as they can wreak in your life, and as much as they can try to manipulate you, and sometimes they actually are manipulated by demons. Like demons will actually use their negative energy to cause further harm. But a demon can physically harm you in many ways. In fact, many demonologists and even exorcists will tell you, if you read a lot of books that are written by exorcists like Father Amroth and other, Father Fortea and really prominent exorcists, many exorcists have died because of dealing with demons, and have actually passed because of the fight and the battle with demons. Demons are no joke. They're not something that you want to mess with. It's like I said, this isn't a vocation for everybody. I mean, when I said I've decided I'm going to become a demonologist because I think that's what my calling is, I even had people look at me like, are you nuts? Are you crazy? Do you realize how bad things can get? And I said, I think that's the point. I do. A lot of people don't, but I do. So I still go with demons. You never, ever turn your back on a demon. You never, ever trust a demon. A malicious entity, like I said, has certain restrictions against it because it doesn't have the power unless it's being manipulated by a demon. But at that point, once again, the demon is what's the most dangerous thing, because that's the thing manipulating the human entity. So I definitely would go with demons.
Question from Steve all the way in Australia, who's listening to us.
Oh,
where it's tomorrow. I think it's around 6 o'clock tomorrow. He can confirm that.
Kangaroos.
Exactly. He is asking, has there ever been a case of mass hauntings in a new housing estates where homes have been built on burial grounds that people weren't told about? If so, how did they deal with that? Do you mind if I answer this one first?
No, you know what? Go ahead.
Okay. In British Columbia here, there was a famous serial murderer named Willie Pickton. And Willie Pickton in the city of Coquitlam had a pig farm. And they believe he murdered anywhere between 35 and 70 women. Most of them downtown east side Vancouver prostitutes and drug addicts. So he would lure them to the pig farm. And then what he would do is the most disgusting thing. I'm going to mention this, so if you have soft ears, please plug your ears or turn your volume down. There's your warning. But what he would do is after he murdered his victims, he would decapitate them, and a lot of the ladies he would actually put through a wood chipper to get rid of the evidence. And as property value started growing in his area, the family started selling their property and sectioning it off and cutting down the size of their farm. There is now subdivisions. They've torn down the house. They've torn down the farm. There's subdivisions all over that place. I have not heard if there is paranormal activity there. I'm not even sure it's Canadian law that they have to disclose it. But I do know this, that in that investigation, police, when the farm was finally found out and he was arrested, police were positive that many of the DNA samples, bone samples, or clothing samples were actually buried in the ground or spread around the ground where there was subdivisions holding or being built at that time. So some of the ladies and their DNA or anything from them, even though they know they're there, they can't even check up on them. It is a sad situation for sure. But yes, it does happen.
Yeah. Definitely. And then going back to council, and they would find it, and they rebury it with the proper respect at a different location. But that whole island, they always keep finding different bodies that were buried there. And that island is one of the most haunted islands in America. I mean, you can go from the East End to the West End, and every building, every place has a story of a haunting that's occurring there. So it is one of the most haunted locations, and it was a mass burial ground before it started to build up and become an actual community where people live and shop and visit. And so it is definitely possible.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. It is something that is really... It's not a good situation when you start getting into things like that. But it's unfortunate that a lot of the public, like for instance, I would never live there. Like on the pig farm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what everybody calls it. Oh, you live where the pig farm used to be. I couldn't live there. It just, to me, I would know I would end up with the most haunted block or haunted house on the block. Question from J.A. in the SOR Space Travelers. Isn't it clear that people in the afterlife condition spend an awful lot of energy trying to show and tell us religious teachings and religions are wrong?
Can you say that again?
Okay. Isn't it clear that people in the afterlife condition, or in the afterlife condition, so they're dead, let's talk English here, they're dead, spend an awful lot of energy trying to show and tell us that religious teachings and religions are wrong?
I have never encountered that before in over a decade. In fact, religion is almost never brought up unless, I bring it up in order to help a spirit move on. I mean, I've had spirits tell me their name. I've had spirits, tell me when they died or how they died. I've had spirits answer questions that I've posed forth. I actually had a spirit that when I was praying, you have the spirit actually saying amen, amen at the end of the prayers. Which is a very religious, it means amen means I believe. And so when you say a prayer and you finish it with amen, you're saying I believe. And there's a spirit that says amen. I have spirits that actually, again, when you're talking about the demonic, when you start talking to way to bring the body and just to do one thing, and then they have to rest and rebuild that energy. They can't sit there and have a conversation like I'm having where they can just, like I said, have diarrhea of the mouth and go on for hours and do a dissertation about, religious theology. So no, I have never encountered that.
Let's talk about demons. We got about 15, 16 minutes left with you, Andrea, here on the show.
Okay.
The popularization of demons and demonology has really taken off in the last 18 months, where it seems like almost everybody and their dog is a demonologist now. And we can obviously thank television for that. How many demons have you truly ran into?
Me personally, when it comes to actual physical provable demons, I would say in the course of 12 years and hundreds of cases, we're talking at least over 400 or so cases, I could maybe say 3 or 4% that I am confident were demonic. And that doesn't mean that there aren't more out there. That's just what I've personally covered. I've gone to places where, like, people are so afraid of the paranormal that they're convinced it's demonic. I mean, I know that there are some people that say all ghosts are demons. They don't believe in human spirits whatsoever. They believe that you're either a miraculous presence of an angel or the demonic presence. There is no in between. So they automatically believe everything is demonic. And I'll go in there and I'll find out, no, it's not demonic. It is an intelligent haunting. This is not a spirit that's trying to hurt you. This is a spirit that, we can cross over. They want to leave. They're not trying to stay here. They want to go, So, they'll think it's demonic. They'll believe it's demonic because they don't believe in other spirits. But it's not necessarily demonic once I get in there. And just a safe episode, like, like all of a sudden you're going to get this blank stare on your face. It doesn't happen like that. It is more common lately. Again, there is more access to the occult thanks to the internet and thanks to smartphones and, just people in general, looking, like you said, on TV, and it's being more popularized. And so there is a lot more happening nowadays. People are accepting demons into their lives, or asking demons to come in, or inviting them in some way, whether accidentally or intentionally. So it is on the rise, but it still doesn't mean that it is a very large number of what we do. Even as a demonologist, it's still not the largest number of what I do. I still deal a lot with residuals and with intelligent hauntings on the most part.
Do you think that because of the population, or the popularity, of demonology now, that it's just the fad of the paranormal now? It's just something that everybody feels they have to do? Because let's face it, the paranormal is a big copycat when it comes to doing whatever else everyone else is.
Oh, definitely. Everybody with a sage stick thinks they're a demonologist. If they know how to burn sage, they immediately say, I'm a demonologist. When it's a lot more involved in that. When, I decided that I was going to become a demonologist, I've studied theology. And like I said, I'm Catholic, but I've gone outside Catholicism. I've studied other Christian religions. I've studied outside of Christianity about their beliefs and their practices. And, and I've worked with priests who are actual exorcists. This is to me a vocation. This is almost like somebody gets called to be a priest, or they get called to be a nun. And there's just no way I could be a nun. I couldn't live that kind of a life. I've got the mouth of a sailor and no filter. So, I felt like this is my vocation. This is what I was called to do. And I take it very, very seriously. But like I said, lately, everybody with a sage stick thinks that they're a demonologist. And again, you have the issue where they come in and they sage everything. And, it's like a Band-Aid where it stops the bleeding for a time. But then sometimes if you pull that Band-Aid off and you rip off the scab underneath, it starts to bleed again. And that's when I have to come in and, do what I have to do to try to fix the situation. But yeah, it is becoming very fatty. I mean, the idea of being a demonologist, they hold it like it's some kind of like a doctorate title. They think it's like one of the most important titles in the paranormal field, when it's not. There is no title in the paranormal field that is any more important than the next. A paranormal researcher is just as important as a paranormal investigator, is just as important as a demonologist, is just as important as an exorcist. We all have a role to play, and none of us are more important. And when you bring pride into it and you try to say, look how great I am, well, then you're actually feeding the malicious entities, because they feed off of our sins, and pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. So, you can't go into it thinking, well, I'm a demonologist. I got a sage stick. Look how great I am. I can help people. It's, it's a vocation. It's a calling. It's something that you have to study. It's something that you have to research and prepare for and take very seriously, and not put yourself you put yourself way down. Like, you don't think like you're doing anything special or anything important, that this is just, a job that you're doing to help others. It's a vocation, not a celebrity status.
Where are these so-called demonologists getting their training from? because as far as I had always known, you needed to be a Catholic priest in order to do exorcisms and take part in getting rid of these demons. And now, with the demonologists popping up faster than, whatever the analogy you want to make. I mean, where are they getting their training, or are they just self-titling themselves?
Many demonologists are self-titling themselves. Again, they say, like, they go into a place that they say have, like, and like I said, a lot of times they'll go in and they'll say it's like, they'll see an orb that is dust because, the reflection of the light, when it hits a particle of dust or it hits a particle of moisture or dander, it can cause that glowing ball look when the flash of your camera actually captures it. But they'll say, oh, look, there's a demonic face in there. And then they'll go with a sage stick, even though there's not a demon in there. They'll go with a sage stick and then say, look, see, there's no demonic activity. I took care of it.